friends. It's the weekend, and I'm back talking about movies. Is it 2001? I go, what's going on here? Time traveling back a ways. I'm super excited to be here. I've got 3 awesome friends backstage. We're going to be talking about some really exciting movies, some really questionable movies, and some hopefully moderately entertaining movies. For those that are unaware, I've had several live streams centered around movies on my channel, and they've been a whole lot of fun. And I've basically been talking to a bunch of those friends over on Instagram and trying to find ways to get back into doing this a little more regularly. And of course, that means I had to tap some of those guys and talk to them about a way to keep this going the new year. So we've looked at a plan for 2023. A few of these friends and I on different channels, mine and the Comic Chop News channel you'll see down below, once a month getting together to talk about a filmmaker and their movies. So if that sounds interesting to you, you want to subscribe, you want to hang out and watch for at the end of this episode, we're going to pick who gets to choose next month's, or I should say February's filmmaker. So lots of fun going on there. And of course, the guy who is basically partnering this with me, the guy who's making this all happen because he's co-hosting this. We got Dan from Comic Chop News.
Hey, everybody. Honestly, like, we have a whole private chat of everybody who's guested on everybody's shows, and it's entertaining. It always ends up degenerating really fast because, as you'll see soon, Carlito is a bit of a troll.
Well, he renamed our chat group BVS is better than Batman Forever or something like this.
But John's kind of been like the third Beatle to our show. He's guested probably more than anybody else, except for maybe.
I was going to say the same thing in reverse, right? Over on that, when Bearded and I were doing Drinks and Movies regularly, you guys were in the chat or on the show constantly.
So like when you brought this to me, I was like, well, yeah, this is like, other than us having to do Miller's Crossing at some point,
right?
Like this was like a given we have to do, and
or everything
Carlito
everywhere all at once.
That is a movie that's on the list too. Carlito has become a believer, an evangelical person for that, and you might as well just bring him on now.
So yeah, this is Dan. If you're not familiar with his channel, the link is down below. We will be on his channel when we do the next movie breakdown. So in 1 month, if you're not subscribed, you're gonna miss that show. You got to make sure you're over there. And yeah, his partner in crime from Celluloid and Scotch, we got Carlito Classico.
What's up, YouTubes?
I swear, I'm getting Christian Slater pump up the volume vibes from you right now.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I'm excited. I love Michael Mann, as I don't know, most of you should probably know. But
I mean, I think he's one of those really like I don't want to say second tier filmmakers, but those filmmakers that maybe fly a little more under the radar because they're not like huge blockbuster filmmakers, but they're also not they're not making those movies that are cookie cutter. They're not cookie cutter movies for me.
If you watch TV in the 80s, you saw his name in the credits of shows, lots of shows.
And we're definitely going to get to that here. But I got to bring in the yin to the yang here. The guy whose shirt I'm wearing here tonight, the drinks and the guy who's probably done more movie shows with me than anybody. And he lived to tell the tale.
Listen, I'm so thankful I'm on because I can only be backstage when Carlito is present and not being able to defend my honor. I also I love how you mentioned the chat. Like, I think Carlito changed it like 2 years ago to BVS is better than Batman Forever. And I don't know if he ever noticed that we changed it to BVS is worse than Batman Forever.
Right. It's still
we just tell him that it's the way it was, and he just goes with it.
Well, I want to get to the movies. I want to get to the drinks, but let's start with a little. I'm gonna pour a little Eagle Rare here because I know Carlito and I big fans of this brand. And,
I am too.
I'm down to my last bottle. Oh, you too, Dan? Okay.
I first heard of it from Jabroni, I think.
Me too.
But I could never find it, so I was just like, well, I guess that's a unicorn. But.
And while I'm hearing from Dan, what are you drinking, sir?
I am bougie as fuck It was my birthday this week, and I spent $100 on a bottle of Japanese whiskey, Suntory Hibiki. and
Ooh.
it is damn good.
Go up.
Yeah.
And Carlito, what are you sipping on, my good man?
I have a bottle of Dewar's 21 blended
Nice.
Scotch. Yeah, I know, Scotch snobs. Ooh, blended. I don't care. Suppose it got number 2 in 2019 for
You do
scotches.
you
so
drink what you like, man. Right?
dang straight, brother.
Man.
It's pretty good. It's pretty smooth.
Enjoy,
Even
dude.
though
That's-
people don't like that
That's
word.
the
It's
director's
smooth.
cut of scotches right there for you.
Oh,
so.
for fuck's sake.
Greg, what are you sipping on, man?
Man, I'm going beer, and then I'll tap into some bourbon because if I start with bourbon right now, it's
downhill.
a long show. I sip,
Mm.
and it just I'm like, listen, I always have to be drinking something. So if I'm putting alcohol in it, it's got to be. I
It's
gotta
funny.
pace myself.
You're the opposite of me because if I started with a beer, I'm gonna fall asleep, and then Dan's gonna run the show all night. He's gonna have to
By the
pick
way-
up the slack for me.
I see Lost in Comics in the chat. I just wanted to shout out him becoming now a believer in Ascender and Descender. Welcome to the party.
Oh,
Heck yeah. Chris does amazing weekly new comic book content. So if anybody's not following him, I've been shouting him out since the beginning. He is awesome. Yes, Brian's in the chat too. Shout out Comic Jabroni Nation. Abso-freaking-lutely. Oh, there it is. Chris himself. There he is. We got Comic Vet Chris. Another Chris in the chat. What is going on? Comic Vet
oh,
Chris.
Canada.
This guy's in the chat.
I'm
Links
excited.
down below. I got links for these guys down below. This guy just passed 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. What in the what?
I know.
If
well,
he-
listen,
if he can do it. You can.
anybody can.
So my co-host
X.
Tessa, my new
Yeah,
co-host,
she's
is
close.
40 away from 1,000.
Yes.
So
Nice.
Tessa's a
Yes.
nerd. You can also see her monthly on my channel now, doing the Long Box Paradox reboot.
Nice.
I brought it back as a monthly, and Tessa's with me, and she's bringing the comic goods, and
Awesome.
we had a whole show that we
Yeah,
really
that was
went into horror.
was that just last
That
night,
was a
right?
good first show,
my
man.
birthday
It was like-
Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Tuesday night.
And I'm
Happy
glad.
birthday.
I'm glad you have Tessa as your co-host because I'm watching the rewind and Dan's like, "Oh, Bearded had like a some guy who wrote Superman." She's like, "Yeah, Mark Russell." And Dan's like, "I hadn't read any Mark. How have you not read Mark Russell?"
Mark
Come on.
Russell's
Superman's not
hilarious.
really my jam.
Yeah,
like,
that's like not his.
Mark
thing.
Russell is hilarious. I
So-
recommend.
well,
pretty
also
much
Gambit
anything.
showed up in the chat, and then I fucked up the whole Judas coin too.
Oh yeah,
It
because you
was-
said
it
it
was
was
booked.
Tremendous. He's like, "No, it's Band of Bards." You're like, "I thought it was."
So good.
But also shout out to my other co-host Gambit, who did an exclusive cover for Coin of Judas, who Bearded interviewed the writer a couple of times and was supporting the book. So like full circle, but that's kind of a shout out to our channels because we're always doing stuff with
and
the
other than
community.
Carlito, there's a lot of content being produced here. So subscribe,
Facts.
check it out.
Facts.
And now
I did
he's
do
a
a live
professional
stream, though.
podcaster. We're expecting Carlito to get on the bandwagon.
That's not been released yet. I don't know what
It's
you're
gonna be
talking about.
politics.
What's up, TJ? I appreciate it. He says Michael Mann, one of his favorite filmmakers. That's awesome. Compared to Coach Vic, who we're going to be educating Coach Vic tonight because he says, I think I may have only seen one of this guy's films. But the shout out to you, awesome on that, Coach Vic, is the fact that he's only made 11 movies so far. There's one due to come out maybe this year, which would make it 12. So you're really not that far. You've seen almost 10%. You're doing all right.
It's a positive spin there, John.
I try. Like I said, at the end of the show, we're going to spin a randomizer, and one of these three guys is going to get to pick the filmmaker that we're going to study for February. So stick around to the end.
Now,
when we do that.
we will get veto. Will we veto in the chat then?
We
'Cause
will have veto here, and as long as if we have a tie, Fire Guy Ryan's the tiebreaker.
Oh,
So
for
I
crying
will
out
text
loud.
him. In
Were
the
we
middle of
supposed to
whatever he's
bring
doing
directors
tonight.
ready to go tonight?
Who
I thought we were just
It
picking
would
who
be
was
awesome
next.
if you did.
who's the
Okay.
tiebreaker? I haven't heard of this person.
Fire Guy Ryan is number
Mhm,
5
who that
of
is.
the 5 of us.
Tessa's
But,
consigliore.
I want to start with this question first. Okay. There are 11 movies to the name currently of Michael Mann. I put them all in the description of the video. So anybody who's curious what his movies are, but we'll go through and talk about pretty much all of them. My question, I'm going to start with Dan, is what is your first memory of a movie that you distinctly could connect, or an experience that you could connect to Michael Mann and be like, I distinctly remember seeing this?
Okay, so I'm gonna go real old school for a minute. So watching Miami Vice, growing up in the 80s, Miami Vice was such a cultural thing where people were wearing pastel jackets. The end of every show, real large, written by Michael Mann.
Right.
So that name just hammered into me. So like I see his name pop up in a movie. I'm like, oh, well, I've got to.
Yeah. This Miami Vice, this right here.
Yes.
And it's the same for me. So that's why I'm chiming in. This was legit for me. It was like Magnum PI, Simon and Simon, Airwolf, Knight Rider. It was all part and parcel with Miami Vice for me.
Cultural phenomenon during the 80s. Like it legitimately was.
So for those that don't know, he was, an executive producer, director on Miami Vice, the original Miami Vice, and that's why he ended up later making the film version as well. So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the first movie I remember seeing him attached to, then we're talking about Manhunter, which we'll get into detail later. But yeah, like those are my first memories of Michael Mann.
Nice. JP says, great panel. And John, thank you so much, JP. Happy that you're
Thank
here.
I love
I'm just
JP.
glad he said that. Usually it's like, oh, great panel and Bearded's here. Like, so
Nah,
I'm
he's
glad
switching it up.
I'm glad that he has to switch it up to make you feel.
He would never
Also-
say because he knows I live too close to him. So.
JP
Yeah, right.
and Bearded talked about one of my favorite comics ever produced, A Deadly Class.
Yeah. I am 1/4 of the way through it, but I stopped waiting because I knew that I would just read the next 3 hardcovers all in a run, waiting for that last hardcover to drop.
It's
That's the
coming
hardest
out.
thing about doing that show is waiting. So
I don't know if he wrote much of Miami Vice, but I do know he produced and directed a ton of it.
He
but I'm
wrote
sure
certain
he was
episodes.
involved. Yeah. Okay. He just says, visiting the Smoky Mountains is my bucket list because of these movies. There you go.
Oh, it's beautiful.
one
there.
of these
So
movies.
beautiful.
One.
One.
So then let's get over to Carlito. Do you have a distinct memory or can you connect to that first experience with Michael Mann's worlds?
I can. That's a great question, by the way. I wasn't
Thank you.
expecting that.
There you go.
Because
Yeah, I didn't prep them for these first couple of questions.
John's all
like
trying to be good.
I was all trying to think of, this is going to be my favorite one, but then kind of threw a curveball in there. But I like it. So yeah, the one that I identify the most with is Collateral.
Ooh.
Because at the time, some stuff was going on in my life, and needless to say, I was not in a good place. But I walked to the movie theater to see that because nobody wanted to go. It was too cold or snowy, or I don't remember. But I was like, well, I'm going to go to the theater because my parents lived fairly close. So I was like, screw it. My car's dead. I'll just walk. I mean, when I say fairly close, I mean, it's under like 5 miles, which is
And
not
did
that close
silver-haired
to some people. But.
Fox Tom Cruise pick you up? Is that what
I tell you what, man, I almost hopped in the cab after, and then I saw that it was some guy with shades that looked like Tom Cruise. So I was like, pass. No, but
did he try to pitch you on Scientology or something?
No. But long story short, that movie surprised the hell out of me because I didn't know what to expect. I was like, I don't know. I'm not really. Jamie Foxx is cool, but I'm not a huge fan. And then Tom Cruise, obviously, at the time, I was kind of mixed on. But man, I tell you, that's one of his underrated roles, in my opinion. So
I think it's fun to go into a movie having low or no expectations and then just be absolutely blown away, right?
And we can get into it later, but yeah, that's all.
Gore Vidal talking the same thing as Dan.
Ooh,
and
Gore's
I
here.
About saw Miami Vice when it premiered on TV. It was mesmerizing. There was an atmosphere unlike anything else on television. It was like watching a film in the movie theater. There you go.
Also, needle drop 80s tracks every episode.
And Bearded, what about you? What do you have that distinct first recollection of like, this is Michael Mann. Like, I get it now.
I do. First and foremost, gang, like go like John's video right now. So there's a lot of you in the chat. That way more people can join our chat because they'll see it. Algorithms. Let's go.
Good point.
I gotta go with 1993's Last of the Mohican.
DDL.
I was 8 years old, and there's no way I probably should have been watching it. I don't know if I saw it when it came out. All I know is I remember seeing it at home at some point with my mom because she loved this movie. She was big into Last of the Mohicans, like Dances with Wolves. She loved like period pieces in like back in the this is what
the American frontier,
American
Old
War,
West.
First Night, those King Arthur, like that was so like I grew up watching those movies, and I clearly remember, and if well, it's not to give anything away if you haven't seen Last of the Mohicans, but there are some scenes at the end of the movie that, and probably an 8-year-old,
Yeah,
a little bit like,
let's say violent, not necessarily. There's no saucy bits.
No, there really
surprisingly,
there isn't saucy bits, but there's some intense, and I was like, I always thought it was, and I didn't realize that because we used to vacation in the Smoky Mountains. So I'm curious of like if that's why, because my mom was a fan of that movie, but I doubt it. It would have petrified me probably a little bit more when we were camping in the Smoky Mountains. I'm like, freaking Daniel Day-Lewis is gonna come get me. I know it. Like, watch out.
Wasn't Dances with Wolves around the same time frame too? Within like 2 or 3
It was.
years?
I think it was
92,
92,
right?
91, 92. One of those
So
things.
let's see. I got the dates here. The Last Mohicans was 92. I want to say Dances was 90. So I think Dances was
John's
just
right. Yep.
before.
90.
Okay.
So it's right. Because I think Dances won on the Oscar in 90, and then I know 91 was Silence of the Lambs. So it's like right there.
It wasn't Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Thank God.
Hey, I like that movie.
Don't shame Kevin Costner though. I mean, I'm a Costner fan.
Yeah, come on.
You can shame that accent if you
The
like.
Postman was good.
Said
I don't-
nobody.
We're already failing here.
All right.
My second question is this: we spent a month talking about, not necessarily the whole month watching, although I tried to watch everything that he'd ever made. The only one I couldn't watch was The Keep. I never got around to that, and if anybody did, we can get to it at some point. But was there a movie that in this month, when you're doing either rewatching or first time watches of movies you might have missed, was there a movie that surprised you? A movie that maybe jumped out at you in some way, whether really, really good or really, really bad? Maybe, I don't know that I'm putting a positive or negative on it, but for you, Dan, was there a movie that was like, oh, I didn't remember it being this way?
So honestly, Carlito just mentioned Collateral. And I think what gets me is I have this weird appeal to when Tom Cruise isn't playing his stock character, when he goes outside of his comfort zone. Like, I think that Interview with the Vampire is a brilliant performance by him because it's so not his type of performance.
Right.
Last Samurai also, I thought he was rather good in.
I mean,
So, like,
I'm a Tom Cruise fan as well. I just said I was a Costner fan, but I'm also a Cruise fan.
plus seeing him do like hyper violent in this movie, and again, it's so outside of his wheelhouse.
He doesn't play villains, ever, really. So it was an interesting take.
I also have like a weird thing of like, I had never finished Heat. I've always watched Heat in parts. Like, I'd come home and watch and be part of it.
It's pretty. Bearded and I think Carlito both were joking about how, like, did you have to pick a guy whose movies are all like 3 hours long? Did you have to do that?
Bro.
Like, why is that?
Yeah.
His shortest movie is like, he has one movie I think under 2 hours, and then everything else is like, his normal movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes, and then
So-
it's
but
like,
he's only got 11. Like, it
Okay,
wasn't like
but
you picked
that's
Steven
still-
Spielberg, who's got like 45 or something.
that's still like, bro.
And some movies, the pacing was bad and felt like 5 hours.
We're definitely going to get to those.
So, I remember Val Kilmer being in Heat being a huge deal, and then realizing how few fucking lines he has in it. I'm like,
he's almost like like a lantern in the background.
and like, I see like the movie starts and I see the lips, and I just remember, oh, it's Val Kilmer, because after watching Batman Forever, you know those lips.
I recognize those lips anywhere.
That's
Well, what about you, Carlito? Was there a movie that you watched
Interesting.
during this time that surprised you in some way, either positively or negatively?
yeah, I will say positively, and it's a movie that's divisive. A lot of people really hated it or panned it, and that's Public Enemies. I thought I loved that movie more than I ever could, and then I watched it again the other night, and good Lord, man, I found other stuff to love about it. So,
Oh yeah. So for those that don't know, this is the Christian Bale and Johnny Depp film covering Dillinger, the bank robber Dillinger. So this was, I know you love this movie and have a lot of connections to it, like
yeah,
geographically.
and I was obsessed with the history before the movie came out, because we don't have to get into specifics. I'll save that for my podcast coming next month. But yeah. So
I love that he's teasing shows like, he's like, and next month you can see me on Mob chat.
Look at him. Look, he's like all professional now. He's like,
Well, I figure, De Niro's got a nice suit in Heat, and Public Enemies, they're wearing a bunch of classy clothes. I'm like, I'll throw it on tonight. Screw it.
All right, Greg, what about yourself? Was there a movie that surprised you at all?
I don't know if it surprised me. I remember watching The Insider at one point. Probably saw it once to prep for the Oscars or something. And it's not as much the director, but man, I forgot how much Russell Crowe killed it in that movie. His performance was fantastic. I forget who was that. Did he lose to was that Spacey where he lost to American Beauty? Was that the same year?
I don't remember that year. I'm
but
sorry.
It's someone in the chat. Let me know.
What year was that?
I'm about to load.
I want to say 2000.
99.
99, yeah. That's what I was...
It might have been
American
actually,
Beauty.
Might have been American
that was freaking Shakespeare in Love, wasn't it?
Shakespeare in Love I thought was 98.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think American Beauty was 99 because it was right before 2000. I want to say, that just again we can get into that movie, but I remember just sitting there watching that movie. I'm like, man, Russell Crowe is killing it in this. Like, well done.
I watched The Inside Man by accident instead of The Insider.
I mean, don't you recognize the beginning when it says the Spike Lee joint?
No, I didn't. Like, I was kind of paying attention.
I remember you sent me that text. I was like, oh,
and
Lord.
fuck it, Clive Owen was killing it during a certain time.
I thought that was a joke.
It's
I
a
didn't
good
realize
movie,
you were
though.
serious.
It's a good movie. Inside Man's
it's a good movie.
It's a good Spike Lee movie.
I wish
Yeah.
Denzel was in more of these movies.
But
We got Cole in the chat. What is up? Cole's
Hey.
Comics Claims. Has he hit 800 yet? He was right there. He was knocking on the door.
If he has, I'll unfriend him so he doesn't. So
Good. Perfect.
Cole, I'm drinking a 21-year-old Scotch Dewar's.
JP
There
is
you
mentioning the list of movies people have not seen that are Michael Mann related. It's all down in the description if you're wondering, hey, what movies did this guy make? It's in the thumbnail, of course, as well. But you can check down below, and if you want to refresh yourself.
Cole's got my back.
He's almost at 850.
850, yeah.
Inside Man, loosely one of his favorite movies.
John, you didn't have a poster for Inside Man? I'm
I
kind of
wasn't ready on that. I wasn't. So for me, sorry, wait, Greg. You were talking about Insider. I don't want to cut you off.
Nope. I'm good. We'll get there, Van. We can get there again. I'll bring it back. I can talk
good.
when I need to.
Are we going to discuss Man in general, too, just as a forethought? Otherwise, I'll try to throw stuff.
Male.
He has a rhythm, Carlito.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't mean... no, sorry.
Like, I've done shows with this guy. I know what's up.
Don't want to step on John's toes. I'll get the ruler again.
I'm just
Anyway,
trying to keep things
go
on
ahead.
track. I'm staying quiet.
A handful of his later movies I only ever saw once. Yeah. And it was kind of fun to go back and rewatch. And the one that stuck out to me most was Ali. I remember feeling like it was slow. I remember feeling like it didn't hook me and interest me. And I had a totally different experience this time around where I was captivated by a ton of different little performances. LeVar Burton pops in and I'm like, wait, LeVar is in this movie? What is happening? Van Peebles is in this movie. I'm like, this is.
There's always got to be Van Peebles. Whether it's Melvin or Mario.
All the cameos in this movie were great. And it might have just been that I've educated myself more since I first saw this movie. Because Ali was 2001. So, it's been 22 years since that movie came out.
I didn't appreciate when I first saw it. I really didn't. I watched it recently and I was like, fuck, Will
It's
Smith
a
was
heck
really
of a
good.
lot better than I remember it.
It's really good.
And I definitely recommend if you only saw it once or never saw it, it's worth the go back. And the acting alone, there's great performances all the way through. Michael T. Williamson as the fight promoter. What's his name? I'm already drunk. Jesus.
Don
the
King?
big hair. Don King.
Don King.
Oh, yeah,
Don King. He's great.
Yeah.
Of course, Jamie Foxx is great. John Voight is great.
John Voight.
That Howard Cosell and Ali.
Yes.
That
Oh my
relationship
God.
is fantastic.
So good.
And John, I know because we talked about that movie when it came.
It's really good,
but
JP. It's not a hot take.
It's not a hot take. It's a good movie.
That's not a hot take.
I loved that they did the scene of the one night in Miami, the hotel scene with the fort, and
that might have
it just
been
hits it real quick.
because I watched that movie because it was nominated. Was it last year nominated?
It was
for
2 years
Best
ago when we did
Picture?
the Oscar nomination show.
And that's a great movie too. One Night in Miami that focuses on that evening when the several key characters
when
in
Ali,
the history,
Jim Brown,
Yes,
Malcolm
they all
X,
met to
and
talk him out of.
Sammy Davis, right?
Sam Cooke,
Sam Cook.
and
Those four were all in the room.
it was a real moment in history, and those guys were all together. And this movie even has that moment as a pivotal sequence in its film, and it was just great to see that again and actually like appreciate it when I couldn't have in 2001. All right,
we talked about it beforehand. I thought this was probably the best cinematography done of all the Michael Mann movies,
which I think is a hot take for me because his movies are almost always amazing to look at.
Different direction, I think.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much POV a lot of the time, which some of his movies are like the rotating camera and stuff like that. So I thought it was really good. And again, like this Ali performance, watching it now, I would put it up there with Chadwick Boseman playing James Brown in Get On Up. Totally underrated movie, which I think more people should watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And a great central performance that all the other characters doing great work around just elevated. Right.
And watching that movie made me realize that I have a little bit more respect because Chris Rock can take a punch because Will Smith can box. Homie can throw hands. And so
he did throw a lot of hands. Yeah. And he put on the weight, man.
It looked, man, I've watched enough of the Ali interviews and stuff, like, man, it felt like I was watching Muhammad Ali. Like he crushed it in that role too.
For sure. Silver Knight Kyle is in the chat. He's throwing out Manhunter, which I think I would say before and this is kind of my next question. Before I started this process of looking at his movies specifically, was my favorite Michael Mann movie. Like I love Manhunter. I love that whole like universe that Thomas Harris crafted there. And Red Dragon is a phenomenal book, and I love Manhunter. And even if it's like super cheesy. So my question that's going to go around next, which I basically just answered, is: do you have a favorite Michael Mann movie? Now that you spent some time looking at them all, what is the one?
So I'd say Collateral right now is my favorite, but my favorite memory was I found Manhunter after I'd watched Silence of the Lambs. I was home with the flu, and AMC had it on like weirdly in the middle of the afternoon, and I watched it. And
look at this dope poster I found for Manhunter.
That's pretty sick.
I love this. Creepy.
Brian Cox
retro.
is so good.
Yeah. So if those that don't know, this was the original Silence of the Lambs, right? The original Red Dragon film, the original Hannibal Lecter. Brian Cox, the great actor playing Hannibal here. William Peterson from CSI as Will Graham, the investigator trying to capture.
Wait, you know him from CSI? I know him from Mark Wahlberg's vehicle Fear with Reese Witherspoon.
Everybody's got their own Will Peterson,
So
die in LA.
Stephen Lang is in it playing the reporter Freddie
Oh my
Lons,
God.
which I didn't realize.
This is
From
such
Tombstone.
I had just seen Avatar 2 and I was like, okay, let's watch Manhunter now. And I'm like, wait, the like ripped, scarred villain from Avatar is this like skeezy, scrawny reporter in Manhunter?
Isn't he also in Public Enemies?
Yep, he sure is. He's the
he's one of the
Texas Ranger that shoots.
That's what I noticed a lot is man
assassinates Donor
of the same.
Cylinder.
And in Don't Breathe, he took the turkey baster. I brought it back.
Oh God, why you got to bring up that movie?
I haven't seen that movie, so it's okay. So
overrated. So
Gore
overrated.
says his favorites fluctuate between Last of the Mohicans, Heat, and some of the specific Miami Vice episodes that he really loves. TJ's a big Manhunter fan, seen it about 20 times. And we were discussing, as far as physical media goes, Manhunter, one of the hardest movies to find in physical media anymore. They just don't produce it.
Is it even on streaming either?
The versions
I had to buy
you can
it.
buy
like
on
digital.
eBay are super expensive.
I bought it. I got it at the library. I was trying to remember.
I had to do a digital download basically.
So the Scream Factory, Shout Factory version was the last one that come out in Blu-ray, and it's $150.
So Toby. So eventually, hopefully, one day they end up releasing it again. But it's a
Farina?
really cool movie. Dennis Farina
loves using him.
Are is this? I don't want to throw off your rhythm. Are we going to talk about Manhunter now since Dan brought it up a little bit?
I just wanted to go, but certainly if it's your favorite, then let's talk.
No, I just wanted to talk about it at some point. It's not my favorite.
Let's just go around and then we'll get back to the.
That's why I wanted. Sorry, I didn't want to miss out on that.
Stop the presses. Is Dan getting us back on track here? What is going on?
I'm going to give credit to Bearden on
track.
That
I think
even
we
the
were
stop clock
clarifying.
tells the right time twice a day.
Which track we were taking. That's all I was doing. I wasn't getting off track. I wasn't the one like going, "Oh, don't breathe." Oh,
Bob, what's going on?
That's right. He did throw us off, so it's only right of him to bring us back on.
So yeah, for me, Manhunter was the one before I went in and did this rewatch that I would have called my number one pick. Carlito, what about you?
Up until recently, Heat was my number one. So,
and I think it's his most like the movie that I think people most identify with him, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it's the movie when you talk about him that people are like, oh, the De Niro, Pacino crime epic with the battle in the middle of LA with the machine guns and everything. That's the one. Yep.
That's it. That's all I got.
Man of many words. Bearded?
Not tonight.
Man, I'm gonna stick. All right. What day? It is February
3rd
at 10:35. I agree with Carlito. Heat is still my favorite.
Heat's your favorite.
It was going into it. It was my favorite, and rewatching them all, rewatching Heat. I love the characters in it. I love the story. There's so many great moments for me that of all the movies, it's probably one that I will rewatch more than others. So,
I failed to finish my statement. Collateral took over as number one, by the way.
Well, that's why
after these rewatches,
yes, I said up until the rewatches, Heat was my.
So I just went with it. So we can strike that then because it's no longer. I agree with them. So.
No, you agree with old Carlito, not with new Carlito.
With old Carlito.
So then I guess that brings up the question. After this month, has your view changed on your number one? So Greg, are you still
it's still I thought that's what we were answering. Our favorite ones. Yeah, it's still Heat for me. Okay. It was Heat going into it and then rewatching or watching for the first time as many as I did. Heat was the one I enjoyed the most, and it was the one that I'm like, I will rewatch it more. So the most.
And then Carlito, you said it was Heat, but now it's Collateral for you.
Yeah, Heat used to be the one I enjoyed the most, and I don't know why. I watched that tonight actually.
Nice.
And I don't know. Collateral
still had time for this stream?
Was better. Amazing. Well, I left a little early, but I'm going in tomorrow, so. Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. It depends on how much scotch I have.
So Dan, if has your view of your favorite movie changed from Michael Mann, having gone through this at all? Is it like,
yes,
have you had a change to thought process?
Manhunter is interminably fucking long. After rewatching it, like I didn't realize how long it was until like I was watching it the other day. I was like, holy shit, this is still going. We're not even quarter of the way through.
We haven't even started dealing with the Tooth Fairy yet.
That was like the shortest one I felt like.
I know, and that's the weird part. Like, I was just like, oh my God, like, we're not even to Inagata DeVito. Like, we're not even close. Like, it shocked me. Collateral was like the best paced.
It is a very well-paced movie.
Will concur with that.
I would definitely agree. It's a well-paced film
Yeah.
by comparison because he does make
that's like a short film in a
movies. All right, so then Dan, what is the current one now?
So his shortest film is his worst. Oh my God, Greg, what the hell?
Collateral.
I didn't say that about Manhunter.
Ooh.
Collateral.
So Gore, lots of love for Collateral tonight. Don't be too surprised. I will say on the rewatch, Last of the Mohicans, I think eked out a win for me. Like it was always way up there for me. I always loved it. But I just felt like I was in it more. Like I was just every moment worked for me on a different level this time. And so Last of the Mohicans probably eked out the W this week.
I mean, it's got to be because of that score because
dude,
it's an amazing score.
Good.
It's so good. I like it. I forgot about that score, but I rewatched Last of the Mohicans last night because I was gonna do it this morning, but I was like, because I'll watch a movie with my wife last night, and we started to put it on an Oscar movie, and she's like, I don't even know what's going on. I'm like, well, then why am I watching this with you? I'm like, I'm gonna watch Last of the Mohicans. And
Oddly enough, I forgot who did that score.
I should have checked, because as soon as I heard that music, I was taken back to that first memory.
I mean,
that you
right?
asked about. I was
Thomas
And I
just like,
think Gore mentioned it earlier,
Oh,
from the
Thomas
opening
Newman?
moments of that deer hunt,
yeah,
all the way to the final vista moments when the
That-
father is sort of saying goodbye to his son. Like, the music is
it's fantastic.
absolutely epic. We got Donnie in the chat. What's
Donnie,
up?
what's
Master
up,
Donnie,
Donnie?
what's up?
And Silver Knight Kyle says Manhunter was shot to make you feel uncomfortable, uneasy, and mildly annoyed by its pacing, putting the unknown first-person experience right in your face. I
For
totally
sure.
agree. And I think if you watch Silence of the Lambs, you can see that Demi is copying a lot of these things. A ton of that movie is shot with the actors talking right into the camera, which is super off-putting when you have non-blinking Anthony Hopkins just staring at you in huge sequences. It's very uncomfortable.
Giving you the creepy eyes.
So what I'm going to do now is we're going to kind of go through the movies chronologically in the order of which they were kind of made, spend a little time talking about it. We're not going to do the television, but of course we're going to talk about Miami Vice, the movie, and that will inevitably bring us to the show. And I know Dan's going to want to talk a little bit about television versus cinema, because you can kind of see some elements there that we want to get into. Sorry, Greg,
Yeah.
did you want to say something first?
Oh no, you just said Miami Vice. Sounds like that's
Birdman hand rub.
He's very excited about this one. Let's start with a movie that maybe people have never heard of or don't know much about. We got James Caan in Thief, and let me see if I can find the poster for this one, because that was a difficult one to find. Yeah, Jimmy Caan plays a thief who is a professional and gets kind of stiffed out of some money and gets in with some rough people, and some shit goes down. This was his first film from 1981. We got Michael Mann's The Thief. And this movie also seems to be like typical of what he's known for going forward, which is crime, gritty crime drama stuff, right? Anybody seen this one? I've seen this one.
I did years and years ago. I didn't rewatch it. I remember.
Carlito, have you seen this one?
I have not. I don't think so.
All right. So there's two of us.
Yeah, I didn't watch his first.
Did
two
I not
movies.
spell Thief right? Jeez, dang it.
I was gonna say something, but I
Man,
just
Spidey got
just
me.
let it go.
I'm gonna get rid of it. All right. So Dan, what are your thoughts on the
It was solid. Like, it's not my favorite movie. Again, the pacing, like, he had to figure out TV versus movie pacing, and I think that was a huge deal for him as a writer and a director, is
right.
getting the pacing right. And it got better as the movies went on, but this one in particular, I did not love the pacing of. But Jimmy Caan, not long after The Godfather, and I think De Palma's Blow Up was the same year.
Yeah, this movie
A
has
blowout.
some De Palma vibes for me. Like, this feels it feels the least Michael Mann of his movies in some ways.
But who was hot during that time? De Palma.
De Palma was, and I know, and so it has some of those vibes. It's a good movie. It's got some good twists, but I wouldn't put it in the top 5 of his 11 movies personally.
I'm not. Willie Nelson was in it too. That's crazy.
He's very, very important. I don't even remember.
I was gonna say I think I might have watched
it for
that
the
on
first
TV
time
as a
just
kid,
last
but
year, and it's kind of what made me think of him
I
as a
don't
choice for
much.
this activity, just because I finally went back and watched this first movie. All right, well then let's move forward, since not many of us have seen that. His second movie is the movie he says is the movie he never wants to be known for. It's called The Keep from 1983, and it is legitimately the only one of his movies I've never seen.
Never saw it.
same here.
Never saw it.
Yay! Okay, so we all skipped this one, and Michael Mann would probably thank us for that. But if anybody in the chat
let
has
Michael Mann
seen
know
it,
that we skipped it because he said so. We've watched all his other movies, but not
Right.
this one. You're
that's
watching.
the
yeah,
only one of his movies that I've seen 10 out of 11. That's the 11th right there. All right, so it's called The Keep, 1983. Haven't seen it. Gore says it's one of his more unusual movies. So there you go. Let's see here. Never seen it either. Okay, lots of people feel that way. All right, so then let's move forward. 1986, Manhunter. I know, Greg, you were saying you wanted to say some things about this.
Well, I
this
wanted
film.
to talk. I wanted to know when we can talk about movies. I didn't know the order.
Yeah, the original Silence of the Lambs movie, the movie that that basically
Can I ask
failed
you guys
so
this
much
question?
it took 5 years before they could actually go back
So
and make a sequel.
can I ask you guys this?
Yeah.
Was this your first movie experience with Silence with like Hannibal Lecter and
No.
Will Graham? Second.
I think it might have been my last.
I think I saw this before I saw Silence.
I saw this after all the other ones.
But I'm one of the few.
That's where I'm wondering, because I feel like you're one of the few, because this was really hard for me, as well as Brian Cox did as Hannibal Lecter, to play the comparison game of Anthony Hopkins, because to me, that is what I grew up with as Hannibal Lecter. And I mean, I just watched Manhunter this month, so like
Fired Guy Ryan, number 5, the 5th member of the I don't even know what the basketball team.
We got our starting 5. So like, this was the first.
The Syndicate.
I watched the Hannibal Lecter TV show, so I have a handful of Hannibals that were before.
I love that show.
It was really good. So
freaking show.
It was. I had to try and separate myself from that experience, and it was hard for me to do. Going
on the rewatch, I had that issue.
I was like, it's good. I was like, Brian Cox is doing a really good job here, but I'm like, it's no Anthony Hopkins.
It's so different, right?
Yeah, Brian Cox was more playful, I felt, in it, and not as malicious,
and seemed more like human. Like Anthony definitely goes for a sort of alien detachment that Brian Cox is not playing.
Right, and that's where it was tough to separate it, and so I almost wish it was like a different world because of that, but I thought he did a really well.
Do you want me to know how to make that better for you? All you got to do is watch Anthony Hopkins in Hannibal or Red Dragon, and you'll be like, damn, this guy sucks. These movies are awful. His performance gets so much worse with each movie. I know Brett Ratner can be blamed for a lot of that, but like Anthony Hopkins, anybody who's like Anthony Hopkins is always going to be my Hannibal has not watched the other Hannibal movies the guy made because they're horrible. And he becomes a caricature of himself. Yeah. And it's so painful to watch.
Love every minute of it.
With a great part, absolutely drown in bad filmmaking.
I don't know if I like NPR Carlito over here. He's like, I like it.
Did they remake, or was Red Dragon the Will Graham?
Red Dragon was a remake.
It was
of
the
Manhunter.
one with Edward Norton,
but it was a remake. It was a
remake of Manhunter or the book basically. Red Dragon. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
My lady friend just texted me to let me know that thief was spelled wrong and it was making her eye twitch.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I was a little bit toasted when I started making all the little banners up.
Hi, Angie.
Hopefully, I didn't misspell any of the other banners, but we'll see as the night goes on.
So
yeah, I like Hannibal too. The soundtrack is phenomenal.
The Hannibal
Hans
series.
Zimmer is amazing.
The problem with Hannibal is that Thomas Harris had decided that they needed to belong together. That this was a love story. I'm sorry that the Clarice Hannibal story is not a freaking love story.
No,
it wasn't great. But it was enjoyable.
Not.
See, my worst.
Clarice does not have any attraction to Hannibal Lecter.
I don't like
it in Jodie's face all through the movie.
Jodie's
imply that they fall in love and run off together.
Jodie's not even in it. It's Julianne Moore
playing the same part,
which makes it even worse.
Yeah, there you go. See, yes.
But Mads Mikkelsen, his version of Hannibal, and the earlier Will Graham from the Brian Fuller series
was really good.
And honestly, really good. That's my Hannibal. Like that. That's the guy. So for me, Brian Cox is up against Mads Mikkelsen, not Anthony Hopkins anymore.
Because Mads Mikkelsen is so more insidious
and has something just about hours. The amount of hours under his belt playing the part, I think he just seeps into the subconscious.
But he's a little classier too.
Will Graham and Manhunter, I really like.
Hugh
Peterson because he's and Manhunter, I like.
Oh, sorry, Will Peterson.
He's a little bit more unhinged.
Yeah, he seems he seems like he seems more fragile.
Yeah. Well, and I I appreciate that part. I'm glad you brought it up, Dan, because I mean it is one of those things like to go through what they experience, as forensics, like man, that's got that. You don't just bottle that up, and like what it does like with his family and
the wife and family with the kid in the grocery store was intense.
Yeah, and like that whole stuff of like when they're like figuring out that they're communicating with the killer for his family, I'm just like, Oh,
Yeah.
and I also couldn't separate because the main killer in this is the main one of the bad guys in Last Action Hero. So he plays
He plays a really great villain, but although he's also in Heat as the guy who's giving them all the bank job. He's the one who sets up the bank job.
But you know who else is in Heat that I just noticed?
Tom
He's
Noonan?
in Heat.
But he doesn't set up the bank job. That's Voight, isn't it?
Yeah, no, he's the one that brings the bank jobs, like the plans for the bank.
Okay.
He's got the code to break in.
Oh, Voight's the one that Voight's
is the middleman.
The cash afterwards. And stuff.
So, sorry, Gore, I'm canceled. Cancel me.
Iron Butterflies, Inagata-Devita.
I love Julianne Moore. I just don't like her as Clarice. That's
not a fan.
I'm willing to give her a ride. A ride. I'm willing to give her a pass on pretty much everything else. Not on the Clarice. That
must be John's hall pass.
The last 15 minutes of Manhunter make up for every weak part in the middle. Because with Inagata-Devita playing.
So let's talk about this quickly, because we have Manhunter, we've got the movie Red Dragon, and we've got the novel, and they all end a little differently. They changed the ending to the novel Red Dragon from the movie Manhunter. The movie Manhunter does a totally different ending and has a big shootout finale at the house that really doesn't occur in the book. In the book, he fakes his death and then shows up, like Hannibal gave him the address to his house, shows up at his house to try to kill Graham and his whole family. And they do a similar version of that in the version that Edward Norton was in. How do you feel about these different versions? Anybody have a preference?
I don't know if I've seen Red Dragon or read the novel, so I couldn't.
Then you're a smarter man than I.
Red Dragon, I don't know, it didn't need to be remade, in my opinion. And it's kind of like that Psycho remake that was shot for shot with Vince Vaughn. Like, it never needed to be made, and I didn't need Red Dragon to be made.
But they wanted to cash out more Anthony Hopkins, right?
Yes.
But they didn't have the technology to de-age him, so it was just kind of like, we won't worry about that. What about you, Carlito? Have you seen both? Do you have a preference for the ending?
I have seen both. I have not read the book, although I heard this guy that I used to live with. He was a huge novel fan, and he liked like American Psycho and all that other stuff. But he actually turned me on to that Hannibal show, which I probably wouldn't have known about because I didn't have.
I'll say of the books, but I like Red Dragon the best. I think it's the one that works the best as a novel.
I think that's what he said too. Yeah. So for me though, really still intense. Ed Norton. I mean, I liked it.
And the twist of him not of him showing up at the house at the end works better in the book, because that chapter is all like the chapter where he seems to die at the house with the shootout. It's all from the perspective of the blind lady, and she's just trying to hear what's going on in the house. And there's fire over here and gunshots and things. And then later the cops are like, what happened? And she's like, I heard a gunshot. They found a body with its face, no face. It had been shot. They assumed it was the killer, and he staged it with her. Right. And all you get is her hearing of it. And it's kind of a cool way to have that sequence play out.
Well, the whole end of it is a misinterpretation of him thinking the other guy's hitting on her when he's like feeling her face to get something off of it, with the insanity of it. But just that whole end. And then when he has Stephen Lang, when he's got the mask on, he's like, so do you think I'm a homosexual? I want you to read this. And he's got the pantyhose over his head.
I mean, but you get Philip Seymour Hoffman playing that part in the other version. He's really great as that creepy journalist in that one.
I mean, even Mission Impossible that he was in was like,
I freaking love that Mission Impossible, don't you?
So did I.
I wanted him to be the Penguin, to be honest. He would have been a great Penguin.
Yeah, he would.
Somebody mute Dan. He's trashing a great Mission Impossible movie.
Nobody's find her. I'm gonna hurt her.
So I'm with you, Dan. I like the Manhunter ending better. The Inagata-Devita, the jumping through the glass, even though the jump through the glass is
stupid.
It's almost laughable, because if you watch that sequence again, it's like he's slow motion running and the killer's just watching him through the window like, what are you going to do? And he jumps through the window with this dramatic crash. And what happens? The killer catches him and just throws him. And he's like, "What? You suck at this." Like,
in Fear, he throws Mark Wahlberg out the window.
It's like the climax of the drama. That moment absolutely crashes with the result, and it's almost laughable, but still kind of works.
Ooh,
yeah, Emily Watson, great part of Red Dragon. I agree.
Good point.
They really cast the Red Dragon film well. They just picked a really bad director, and the script sucked.
So that brings me up to one of my points on Mann. His whole cast in his films are so amazing. I forgot how many tiny roles that great actors and actresses had in his films. Natalie Portman. Then there was the lawyer from Jurassic Park, bringing it back to Julianne Moore, but that was sold Val Kilmer the supplies at the construction yard.
But I think
so that was cool.
As we go through these movies, I think one of the things to think about is kind of what some of the similarities are to his films. And I do think quality casting from top to bottom is
even Jeremy Piven as the doctor in Heat. Like very tiny role, but it's hilarious.
Hank Azaria is the sleazy.
My daughters gave me this for I don't care who gave it to.
I'm so upset that video got me over 1,000 views, 1,000 likes.
So you guys obviously haven't mentioned the best one yet, Channing Tatum.
Oh yeah, Public Enemies.
That's Pretty Boy Floyd.
That was classic.
I hear a big chunk of his part in that movie got cut.
Oh yeah, it did. They were supposed to have
a bunch more, and it got cut from the movie.
Like 30 more minutes of it. I think
because it wasn't cut.
No,
I mean, well, Michael Mann, he probably shot 2 other movies, and they just compared it down. Let's jump to his next movie, which for me, I absolutely loved even more this next time around. Last of the Mohicans, Daniel Day-Lewis, Madeline Stowe, Bearded. Let's kick it off with you this time. Are you a Last of the Mohicans fan? What are your thoughts on this movie?
I am, but it's top 5, but it's not top 3 probably for me. I like it. I struggle with period movies more often than. So it was good watching it though, because it took me back to how a soundtrack, and I know I talked about earlier, but how a soundtrack really can make a film, like, and
or specifically in this case, a score, right?
A score. Yes. A score. Like I heard that as soon as I heard those notes, that music, I was like, it took me back to like, it was so memorable. And it just is one of those, like, I was impressed with the movie. Like I was hesitant rewatching this because I was just like, how is this going to come off like 30 years later of like, white males and
like
Native Americans, like it's, the white savior aspect. I was just like, is this gonna, and I thought like I thought like it holds up from that aspect. Like it wasn't like who they cast in the roles and stuff like that. And so I was impressed that like, I was like, man, okay. It did not hinder me from that. Like where John, we've talked about movies a lot of time. You're like, you have to think of the time and place when it was shot and stuff. Like it probably doesn't hold up as well. I thought it held up well from that standpoint.
I totally agree.
And go ahead.
Was this right after My Left Foot? Because that was his Oscar performance, correct? Like, was it?
It had to be. I want to say like, that was like right in the early
close
90s, like 90,
pretty close
91.
If it wasn't.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, you're right. The score on this, like you start hearing it and immediately you're taken back to in the theater. I have that same thing, and it's a weird Ridley Scott movie, but Kingdom of Heaven probably has one of the best fucking scores. Like the movie is ungodly long, but the score is amazing. Gladiator also had an amazing score when like you sit down and start watching it and you're like, I love this movie, but I love this score also.
Thank you, Kyle, for doing the work and clicking the links. He said, I wasn't subbed to some of these folks. I'm remedying that. Thank you, sir. And that's good that you're doing it because next month we're over on Dan's channel with whichever filmmaker we end up picking for the month of February. So you want to be there.
I appreciate that very much, Kyle.
Gore says, surprised when Daniel Day-Lewis accepted this role. I knew him from one of my favorite films, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and didn't think it would work, but it did. Beautiful film. TJ saying one of his all-time faves.
Yeah.
Well, let's check in with Carlito. Sorry, Greg, did you have more?
No, I was just saying night to Kyle because you said night all.
Oh, good night, Kyle. Night. Carlito, did you have a view of this film? Have you seen Last of the Mohicans? What do you think?
I have. Boy, in the 90s, I must have watched that at least 5 times, I'm sure, but I haven't seen it since, unfortunately. So
you liked it? Didn't? I mean, obviously you watched it 5 times. You didn't hate it.
Soundtrack was great, as Greg mentioned, just amazing from the very start. And yeah, I mean, from what I recall, I loved it. So I have nothing. I don't have anything that I remember that I didn't like from it. So,
and now back to the main guy here. What's up? Chop News, Chop News. What is the Last thoughts on Last Mohicans? Does it work still?
I still enjoy it. Like, you sit down and start watching it, and I had the same thing with Greg. Like, man, does this hold up? Like, I haven't watched it in probably 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you start watching it, and like Daniel Day-Lewis, as many times as he's been awarded, I don't think he gets the respect he deserves. Like,
he makes it look easy
because he's very method, and like I'm sure he probably went and lived on a reservation just to get the whole vibe. I mean, you just hear about when he played what was the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? The Gangs of New York.
Oh,
where like he went
that.
completely method on there and was in character constantly.
Same with There Will Be Blood.
Yes. And my God, that's a movie I want to talk about at some point. But like the movie held up. Is it my favorite? No. Again, there's pacing issues, but the cinematography in this is fucking great.
So all of you agree it still holds up then?
Yeah,
I think it more than holds up. Personally,
I'll have to rewatch it.
I think the action sequences are stunning. The hunt at the beginning, the attack, the sneak attack on the hill. When he rescues the girls, the battle at the fort, the assault when they're escaping, and then of course the big fight on the waterfall. I feel like the fight sequences are incredibly well done.
So
the stunt work is phenomenal. The cinematography stunning.
The end fight,
one of those few movies that are like period pieces where you legitimately feel like you traveled back in time. It feels like you're there. It doesn't feel like you are there. They're on a set somewhere. It feels so authentic.
So it feels like Tenet then. All right, cool.
Like incredibly violent, like unexpectedly violent. Like it's the same thing when I went to see The Patriot. I was not expecting like to see people's legs getting blown off when I walked in, like first 10 minutes.
Right.
They had cannonballs, Dan. What did you think was going to happen?
John, can you just highlight TJ's comment and then Gore's comment, please?
That was pretty good.
This one right here. He lived in the woods for a month and slept with his rifle. And then Gore says, "And not Madeline Stowe." I mean,
Tenet, a great Michael Mann film.
It keeps happening.
And to circle back real quick, Madeline Stowe was one of my crushes in the 90s, so maybe that's why I watched it so much.
I don't blame you for that.
Amazing
we got Heat, his crime epic, the first time Pacino and De Niro sit and share dialogue with one another, that iconic coffee shop scene. Carlito, I know you're a fan of this movie.
I could watch just that scene every day for the rest of my life. It's so amazing the way they play off of each other and the little micro actions and stuff that they do. It's God, they're just, I don't know. It's too bad we didn't get like a whole film of them in their prime, but at least we got that. So,
well, they've done a few other movies together. Like they were cop partners in that horrible Righteous Kill movie.
Never saw it. I heard it was too bad.
Do it. Don't.
Not gonna watch it.
But yeah, I think with what little they have here on screen together, it works. But I'm curious, Dan, your thoughts. How's this movie aged for you?
This was my first time watching it through the whole way through.
What?
I had watched parts here and there. So my first thing was, man, I remember it was a huge deal that Val Kilmer was in this movie because Val Kilmer was at his height.
Yeah.
He barely speaks. He barely
speaks.
He's so hot right now.
That ponytail, amazing.
Yeah, but again, that was during that time, and this was pretty close to Tombstone within a year or two, which Tombstone, Val Kilmer peak performance. I will go to my grave on that. Pacino, this is post Scent of a Woman.
Yeah.
And he is high pitched. What are you talking about? Ooh-ah! Like,
so that video you posted of him with Hank Azaria, that scene for me is like the poster child for the example of Al Pacino is over the top as a performer. That's and I learned that scene was ad-libbed, that like he was just trying to get a rise out of Hank Azaria and he just went for it. And Hank Azaria was like, I don't know how to respond to this, so I'm just going to sit here dumbfounded. I will say that scene is laughable to me. Like I have a really hard time not just losing it and laughing.
The weird underrated scenes.
You mentioned that you had a hard time with the Natalie Portman rescuing her from suicide scene, and I felt like the complete opposite. Like I felt like he was so understated and so like soft spoken and so gentle in that scene. I was
What
moved to
got
tears
me
every time I
when
see
he
that.
went into the hospital and started telling them exactly what she needed.
But he's
where
like
they never-
whispering to her, "It's gonna be all right." I'm like, "Oh
Well,
my
yeah.
god!" It's so like it's so genuine to me.
It was the physical actions of him ripping the towels, honestly, that just.
It all worked for me. Like it
But
all,
when he went to the
it all
hospital,
felt
he's like,
real to
she's
me.
gonna need blood, she's gonna need a tube, and blah blah. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know what the fuck she's gonna need?
He's a cop. He knows
He
this
deals
stuff.
with homicides all the time.
Absolutely, he would know that stuff.
So my weird favorite
Robberies.
scene of the whole movie was when all the wives with all the criminals are out to
At
dinner.
the dinner
and
table,
Oh,
It
yeah.
had the Goodfellas vibe to me,
Yeah.
where
yeah.
you know the wives are playing ignorant and they really know what's going on, but they're enjoying the good life.
See, that Michael Mann, his framing of that film, I think arguably is one of the best because it also juxtaposed the cops and their
Cops, 'cause
wives
they
and
go out
them
at
at
one
dinner
point
and going out and stuff, and it just
sure.
Yeah.
the
They're all
balancing act
scumbags.
of
They're
their
all
lives.
scumbags.
Well, yeah, well, I mean,
And
some
they're
of them
all
are
I don't know
kind of
that
good.
I do want to get this raises a
not
great question.
perfect.
Before we get there, I didn't give a chance for Greg to answer the Al Pacino overacting question in this movie because it's kind of at the core of people who love or hate Heat. Like the people who love this movie are willing to let Al Pacino go.
Yeah,
And the people
well-
that don't like this movie are like Al Pacino's distracting. I can't.
Well, I mean, I see he doesn't distract me from it because I've seen enough Al Pacino movies. Like I don't, and Air Spidey mentioned it too.
Well, I know you're a big Dick Tracy fan, so that kind of explains a lot.
Right. I mean that he's over the top in that, but it works for that because it's supposed to be that. It's a comic book movie. But Air Spidey mentioned that, his characters both have a coke problem, which it
feels that way.
It feels that way. And I am reading Heat 2. I was hoping to finish reading Heat 2
I
before
need to
this
read
show.
that. Damn it.
But just like
But
his
it's
movies,
that bad. And you can't.
no, it's been a great read. I've loved it. I can't put it down except
So
for to watch his
jealous.
movies. But I think it's like 500 some pages long. It's a long book because it's Michael Mann. He can't.
You know it's going to be a 2.5 hour at least movie.
And so he, not to get too off track, but the novel Heat 2, it basically follows everything that happens right after the movie. So it follows Val Kilmer's character.
Charlize and Val Kilmer. And
It follows Val Kilmer's character running from De Niro's or Pacino's character, Hannah. And then that's like 30 pages, and then it jumps into about 15 years before the heist, and it goes to De Niro and all the Val Kilmer, all the gang, and it kind of paces up, and it goes back and forth between leading up to the events
Prequel to sequel.
and then yes, and it deals within the prequel stuff of he is a detective that has a drug issue that he does it to bring the edge down of what he has to deal with. So again, it's hard to say like that helps justify it even more because I've loved that movie before I even read this book. And it's one of those where I don't want to be that guy who's like, oh, well, if you read the Star Wars novels, then if
you've seen the Clone Wars,
sense, like,
God,
that's a shot at JP.
But it does justify it a little bit of if he was told by Michael Mann, and it doesn't mention it in the film of like, hey, your character has a substance abuse problem. Level it up. And maybe that's also Michael Mann just being a dope director of going, I know Pacino's going to dial it up, so I'm just going to tell everyone that I told him he had a coke problem.
De
that
understated in this movie. Like,
he is. He is.
Oh yeah, De Niro totally understated.
I think Dan, you were about to say something about your favorite scene in the movie.
Well, it was when all the wives are out they have the wives out at the different dinners.
Pair it with the cops and their wives.
Yeah, so that was good. And the De Niro understated, he's kind of being what was it, the gent from Goodfellas?
Jimmy the Gent. Yes, there are flashes of that. Absolutely.
He's playing kind of the same vibe. But if you want to see like De Niro go big, there's that movie The Score with Ed Norton.
Yeah.
I love that.
Where
film.
at the end he has a Pacino moment. He's like, you thought you were better than me. And he's basically telling him how he fucked up.
I will say that the second choice for me for the director for this month was Frank Oz. So like who did Score, because Frank Oz has some buck wild movies that are all over the map and is worthy of this kind of a discussion. So he was right there on the cusp. Oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say somebody mentioned their favorite scene, which is my favorite scene. I think it was Gore. Yeah, the Ashley Judd
So good.
Yeah.
just like moves her
Just-
hand
Man.
moment is a phenomenal sequence, and her performance in that is just tops. Like right there, that scene without any words, I loved it.
Peak Jimmy the Gent was when he cornered her at that hotel and told her to go back to Val
Yes.
Kilmer, and that was like, oh, we got a little bit of Goodfellas going on here. Yep.
All right, well, should we keep going here? Should we move on here? Let's see what we got. 95. Next one up is The Insider, 1999. Al Pacino's back. He's standing in the middle of the ocean, and he's talking on a cell phone that won't get good reception. I will say I've always liked this one. This one's always been a top 4 for me, like top 3 almost, Michael Mann movie, just because I really like the topic. So this has to do with the cigarette insider who basically speaks 60 Minutes and reveals truths about what went on behind the scenes of the tobacco industry. For me, though, the bigger concept here is the theme that Michael Mann has all through his movies, and of course, big time in Heat. I feel like he studies the like duality of man, right? The like two sides of almost all of his characters have a public side and a private side, or a two different versions of themselves constantly at war. It's, hey, let's say it's man versus self. Hey, Michael Mann versus self. Like there's this problem going on with a lot of his characters
Nolan
where
did
they
that in
are
Interstellar, by the way, man versus man.
yeah, I had to do it. Where they have, I don't know if it's just something he likes to dive into, but whether it's Hawkeye, the Daniel Day-Lewis character, who is a white guy living as a Native American who's split between two different worlds, or you have our cop and our criminal who seem to have public lives, like where they're doing their work, where they're like work lives, and then home lives that are just fractured. Ali trying to balance these two sides of himself. I think it's very true in The Insider, where you have these guys who have like a job to do, but then their humanity on the other side. It just seems to be a topic he dives into a lot. I don't know, Greg, what are your thoughts on The Insider? I know you liked it, but like that duality stuff.
Oh, I mean, it is. It's what he deals, like you said, Ali and his faith, and dealing with that struggle of, in Collateral, Jamie Foxx dealing with, he's this, kind of shy guy, but this idea of when he has to dial it up because he gets provoked to dial it up, he can't, like the duality. But to go back to The Insider, this is one that this to me felt like his most complete movie of like pacing wise, story, and maybe it's too like the story. I like the story a lot of this movie. I love those types of true stories where you have to deal with kind of, but I also really dig like the side of like the press aspect of trying to figure out of, are we doing it for ratings? Are we doing it for, and with Pacino's character saying, I got to walk away because, my credibility is done now. Like
I got to walk away.
Like, I will say, as much as a fan of I am of Al Pacino, this felt like a weird casting in this role of Al Pacino and that character of who he was supposed to be in this. So, but I mean, the guy who played, was it Tom Brokaw's character?
Mike Wallace is
That's
played
it,
by
Mike Wallace.
Christopher. Damn it!
Yes,
I'll get it. Yeah,
Christopher, damn it.
yes,
that
that
really
was fantastic.
Christopher Plummer.
Plumber. Yeah, there it is.
Oh,
Russell Crowe. I mean, and the guy, he always pops up. I can't think of him. He's on the CNN crew, or the 60 Minutes crew. I mean, as kind of like one of the side guys, but I feel like he's one of those, like, you recognize him in a movie.
Philip Baker Hall.
Philip
Don
Baker Hall.
Hewitt.
Yeah, he's the head of the news department.
Okay, yeah. I thought he was fantastic. It just, again,
Gandalf's in this too.
it was a
Not
very,
Gandalf.
Dumbledore.
Dumbledore.
Michael
yes.
Gambon. Yeah.
it just was a very compelling story, which that to me gets it. And it always dials it up a little bit more when I know it's like based off of true events. And
Right.
I thought overall, like, it makes sense of why it was nominated for Best Picture, why it had Oscar nominations and stuff. Because I was like, yep, it's one I would have watched during Oscar season. I'm like, I enjoyed it. So,
But have you seen it? I know Donnie's saying something that I hear a lot of people say about The Insider, and we've mentioned pacing issues in some of his films being as long as they are. that this one maybe didn't hold interest. I know my brothers hated this movie. They fell asleep in it, thought it was boring.
See,
Really?
How do you feel? Sorry, I remember.
You talking to me or Dan?
Yeah,
or-
you, Carlito.
Oh,
you.
me.
Yes.
I've already said I loved it.
Well,
So he's talking to you or Dan?
I
Dan's been trying to hide a smirk the entire time.
I know that's why I was like
Dan
waiting
hates
to
this
go
movie,
after
so
him.
that's fine.
No,
So
because I
Carlito-
watched the fucking wrong movie.
Oh, that's right, the Inside Man.
So good. It's so good.
So I worked at a movie theater when this came out, and I think I watched it like 3 or 4 times and enjoyed it. And then I got the DVD and watched it maybe once or twice, but that's been 20 plus years. So,
Right.
but I do remember the score was fantastic. It was very had like a melancholic feel to the whole way he filmed it, and
Sure.
Russell Crowe was amazing. That's the 3 things I take away from it. So, and I do still have the soundtrack, which I haven't
And I
listened to
think-
that much. But
What I think Greg hit on really nicely too is that like I think movies about journalism that highlight the challenges in keeping your integrity in that world. And Greg and I talked about Spotlight.
Spotlight. I was trying to
Spotlight
think,
was
was that the
great.
Keaton one?
Yeah. And
I need to watch
think
that. I
There's
need
a
to watch
ton
that.
of great ones. And for me, this movie is worthy of that list. Even if Al Pacino eats a couple of pieces of scenery along the
Right.
way, I think that the scenes where he
Pac-Man.
nails it are really, really great. And Russell Crowe obviously carries the movie in a big way. But yeah, I think it's just a really, really strong movie that has a lot of big thoughts and big ideas to
Yeah.
say, for sure. Well, then let's
Inside
move on.
Man was a great movie.
Love Spike
Clive Owen,
Lee,
underrated.
right?
Oh,
Real quick,
man.
hold on.
Watch
before
Children
we
of
move on,
Men.
We're talking about Russell Crowe here, real quick, before we get to Dan. Wasn't this like this? I felt like this was like he had like 3 or 4 years in a row where he was
Yeah.
best actor. Like it was
Because
this.
Gladiator
Yeah.
was the next year.
Gladiator was the
Yeah.
next. I thought it was Beautiful Mind, and then it was
Beautiful
Gladiator.
Mind was 2 years
I
later.
think-
It was
Yeah,
98, I
yeah.
believe, wasn't it?
No, Beautiful,
Beautiful
Mind
Mind
was
was
in
like
the
2001 or
2001
2, it was right
2001.
there.
So it was like,
Was it?
but I mean, it was like bam,
He
bam,
was
like,
really hitting home runs.
and it was you're like boom. Sorry,
and
go ahead,
you
Dan.
didn't know what to expect from his performances. You
Yeah,
see
he
something
played-
he's
Rob
like, you're
came
like,
out and
oh, he's like a captain on a ship for England, and now he's like way overweight, and he's like a whistleblower.
yeah,
Like,
the
what is going on?
Hornblower movie. What's
Master
it?
and Commander, the
Master
Far
and
Side of the
Commander.
World
It was
is
the Horatio
awesome.
Hornblower series.
It's
So yeah,
Haven't seen
Gladiator,
it. Haven't
Gladiator
seen
was
it.
next, and then it was
you
Beautiful Mind.
would love that movie, Carlito. You need to add that to your list.
You know, you're not the first person to tell me that.
and then get off your duff.
So yeah.
We got Ali next.
Let's get
2
on my
years
duff.
later, his biopic of boxer Muhammad Ali and his journey through being a civil rights icon and being a celebrity. Dan, did you get a chance to rewatch, or have you even seen Ali?
I did, and the thing I remember most when this came out, the When We Were Kings documentary came out of the Ali versus not Frazier, it was
Foreman.
George Foreman fight.
Yep.
So like that was in the completely like social media for that point. Like it was in the cultural mecca at the time, like
Right.
Ali and his career. And then this came out, I was like, Will Smith, weird choice. Not my first choice. And then like I originally watched it and I went in jaded as fuck watching it. And listen, I was like a 20-year-old asshole kid at the time.
Were you emo, Dan? Were you emo?
I'm always emo. But going back and watching it now, I have a new appreciation of it because I didn't appreciate that Will Smith was acting so against type at the time.
Right.
Because he was always kind of like over the top, like sort of action comedy guy, and then he did very serious movie.
I mean, I was the like weird kid in high school who was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see 6 Degrees of Separation. Like this sounds like an amazing movie." Like I legit saw that movie when I was in high school. So for me, Ali felt just like this guy knows how to act. Like I'm just down for it.
And it honestly, like the cinematography on it was so different from a lot of the other Michael Mann.
Yeah, you
movies.
mentioned that.
I thought the DP maybe was different that he had for this movie because of the action in it, because it's a different kind of action. But I really I enjoyed it. The pacing was fairly good and the performances were all good. I mean, every character actor he always gets are always solid. It never fails. Like Michael Mann knows how to find character actors. Same with Scorsese. Scorsese can find character actors like, oh, hey, you're at the deli I go to. How about you come on this movie? And like they end up on The Sopranos.
So yeah, it was a different cinematographer than he's had in his previous films. So maybe that played into it. I don't know.
Nice.
He had Dante Spinotti for most of his earlier films. Anybody else? Carlito, any thoughts on Ali?
Well, it's like JP said, it's been probably 20 years since I've seen that, and it was in the theaters, so maybe 22 years ago. But I remember it was good. I enjoyed it. Well made.
Carlito's like, I didn't watch any of these movies, John. What the hell?
I usually spend most of my free time watching Christopher Nolan, so all this other stuff, it's kind of hard to.
This is gonna be hard on you, but it's all right. Well, the next one, and so for me, Ali was the movie I will say that had the biggest impact, like difference between what I remembered versus what I saw when I went to this time around.
Yeah,
and it really was impressive. So I would say it more than held up. It surpassed.
Yeah, I remember. Like, it's funny because I remember liking it going into it, and I feel like I even said something in it, like where I'm like, I like Ali, and people are like, I even think like we didn't even bother watching it for our boxing.
We didn't,
because we're just like, it was fine. Like, I enjoy it. I remember saying like I enjoyed it. I thought Will Smith was good. And
Carlito, you're gonna get yourself banned. I don't want Christopher Nolan's face on this show.
I am so glad I rewatched it because again, the acting was great, and I can't stress enough the on-screen chemistry between Jon Voight and Will Smith as Howard Cosell and Ali was fantastic. And you need to go see Ali. Vic, you got to see Ali.
Yeah, Vic, you would absolutely love this movie because as a sports guy, the inside look at what he was going through and his decision making and in his bouts and what was happening behind the scenes of his fights. That's the juice here.
Well, and and there's that pivotal scene, like, because it doesn't deal with Ali coming up into like as a boxer, like his up and coming story. He's in his prime when we start the movie, and it's dealing with the civil rights, as stepping against the war and stuff like this. And there's that scene where he's been, he's had his heavyweight title pulled from him.
Yeah,
and he's blocked. And I think is it with Frazier, right? Where he's in the car.
Yes, because he has a fight where he loses with Frazier, and then he has a fight later that he beats Frazier.
Yeah, where he's like, he basically was like goading him into it. They're buddies. And he's like, I don't have anything to gain. He goes, yeah, but you're not the legit champ until you fight me. Like you have the heavyweight belt. And I'm like, as someone who is a sports fan, like, and who's done sports, I feel like that resonated so well with him. Like, man, that's the easiest way to get someone to do what you want. Like, you have this, but you haven't beaten me to earn this. He's like, done. All right, let's do it. Man, it hit the right notes for me.
All right, well, we got 3 movies left. They're all crime focused, which seems to be the genre that he feels maybe most at home in, Michael Mann. And I know this one was high on a lot of lists. We got Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx, a hitman trying to get his kills in while a taxi driver drives him around town. Dan, I know you're texting Carlito trying to get him back on screen.
No.
Good luck with that. Thoughts on Collateral? I know we had kind of touched on it early.
So understated Tom Cruise performance where he's very insidious. He there's a sinister presence to him, but yet he's very intentional with what he does. And everything, he's like on a clock, he's on a time. He's like, well, we're like a couple of minutes ahead of time. Like, let's go to this jazz place. And the whole time you're trying to figure out like what's going on. Like, so there's a good mystery behind like, why is all of this happening? And it kind of keeps unfolding. And it does the Prestige thing where it goes all the way back to the beginning with the first pickup.
To the girl. Yeah. To the
And I appreciate
Jada's character.
Yeah, I appreciate that because how it all came around was because of this one person. And
JP, of all the ones we've talked about that you've maybe missed, this is the one you need to see. Absolutely.
It's definitely the best paced, most action packed.
I'm sure Ryan wouldn't like it.
No, this was one of Ryan's Fire Guy approved.
Oh, that's
So would
right.
you agree to this
Yeah.
then, Dan? Because for me, his other films, even when they have tension, even when they have drama, it's not as tightly wound. This is a movie that feels like a clock. It's ticking. It's tightly wound, and there's an intensity to it.
It almost feels like there's a clock moving on it,
right?
And it kind of is, because he's constantly looking at his watch, saying, and maybe that's what makes you feel like the movie's going faster, because he's consistently saying, "Well, we're ahead of time. Do you like jazz?"
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what the fuck does this have? This is very random. Like, the only thing that would have made it weirder if all of a sudden they end up at that jazz club J.K. Simmons is playing at and Whiplash.
Well, and it's you both mentioned the time clock. I think it intensified as soon, for me, the timing, as soon as there was that scene with the detectives where they're like, this is very similar to another case where a cab driver was shot, and after like 3 other murders happened, I was just like, okay, not like, you obviously knew he was going to probably try and knock him out anyways, but man, like that you already had the clock, like you both have talked about, but then you add that into it, you're like, because there is a sense of, I've seen enough Michael Mann movies that go, he might kill Jamie Foxx's character and walk away as a movie.
You just don't know.
And
right?
I'm not saying he does or doesn't. So if you haven't seen it, JP, you should go watch it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we've mentioned a couple times the cops on the case, because I think Mark Ruffalo has a great little role in this, and a lot of people forget that he's even in it. And then you watch it, his cop he's really the only one to be piecing any of this together.
He's the only one that cares, because everybody else is like, "Oh, fuck it, let them deal with it."
Yeah, it's
well,
like
then everybody else
killing
thinks
each other.
Jamie
They're
Foxx.
not recognizing the intensity of like what's happening and the time frame of what's happening. But Peter Berg's character can't be bothered, but Ruffalo is the one pushing the like. I
And he's
think
got
these things
an
are connected,
aggressive,
and we're running out of time to solve this, and this guy's going to get away.
he's got an aggressive soul patch that he's gotten
He,
in. Like,
he really does. He really does.
but
Carlito, how are you feeling about what we're mentioning here for this movie? Because it feels like a lot of people are talking about the fastest paced, the tightest wound, the most like thriller-esque, like in the sense of like a Hitchcockian kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're kind of along for the ride too.
Yeah,
Like
right?
you just start out literally
because you're stuck
way.
in the cab that's riding around town.
No, everything. I mean, I've been listening to while I fed my cat has been great. So
what we call it now.
Greg, something I wanted to mention about Collateral, I think it's underrepresented. Obviously, acting wise, the 2 leads got Oscar nominations, huge like cast. But for me, what makes it work, this is ultimately a movie of conversations. The dialogue, right? This is a movie where characters are just sitting in a cab for a lot of their sequences, but you can't tune away, and it's riveting, right?
Yep. Well, and that's what I think. This is where it showcases Michael Mann and the acting roles here, because you're in a cab, and there's the tension of what's going to happen, but I mean, some of those conversations that Tom Cruise has with Jamie Foxx in the cab of like, I'm like, holy cow, like holy buckets. This was the one that captivated
with Jada at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
is the
with that dialogue with him of like, hey, like, I'm gonna take this, and she's like, you would have saved money, like, and it wasn't about that. It was just respecting his job and why he was doing it. Those conversations were great. And man, I will tell you, this though was the first time I realized the aspect that I don't know if this is Michael Mann, but I'm putting it on Michael Mann that I hate. And this is where I first noticed it in his movies. Good golly, somebody get him a sound engineer that knows how to fix the dialogue and fix the sound, because I kid you not, I'm sitting in the chair. I'm pointing over here because my chair is right here. The couch is right here. So I'm watching it here. Mrs. Bearded sitting there. She's on her phone, just not paying attention because I was doing this for a show. And it's like normal dialogue. And I knew this scene was coming, and I completely forgot. It's the very first kill. The guy falls out of the window, crashes down on the car. Yep. And it was
quiet.
It was quiet until then. And then it was an explosion in your eardrums. And my wife let out the biggest, what the was that? Like, are you trying to give me a heart attack? Like, she was like hyperventilating because she wasn't paying attention at all. And it was just so loud. It's like, kapoosh. And then like the rest of the movie, I'm going changing the volume up, changing the volume down.
Yeah.
Now I thought Collateral was bad, but we'll get to how awful Public Enemies was with the sound.
Oh God,
But-
dear God.
So this is
yeah.
the sound mixing, right? That's what
It was the sound mixing.
designers
So,
have to like.
It was.
Yeah,
it-
I do agree. Some movies absolutely do
You
not.
can't
They
do-
they
you
can
can't-
mix it for the theater experience, but not for the at-home experience.
Honestly, though, and credit to the sound mixers, I think honestly, Greg nailed it. Like some of Michael Mann's audio recording while he's filming, just not good. And I don't think he believes in redubbing, so I don't think they do a lot of that, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah,
And that might be
Public
related to
Enemies.
performances, 'cause I know a
Holy
lot of
cow.
actors. A lot of actors don't want to re-record their dialogue later. They want it to be what was in the moment on set, and so it robs some of the intensity. And so maybe it's an actor-director
Yeah, and-
relationship thing.
And I know, Chaos. You're probably clowning about a bad sound system. I probably don't have the state of the art
No,
sound
that's
system,
false.
but I have a sound bar that, and like I still feel like you should not have to be on a remote control changing it, so you're not afraid your 4-year-old and 5-year-old are going to wake up because daddy's watching Collateral.
And some sound mixers mix a mix for theater and a mix for home,
Right.
and some don't. And I think you can tell which is which.
Can we talk about Mastodon's comment, because I never heard that and I've never seen that? And I'm mind-blown.
The casting over the years for Collateral shifted a ton, and there
Oh,
was
yeah, I
this
forgot
version
about that.
at one point.
Oh, my
Yeah,
God. I really
Wow.
forgot about that.
You
Carlito
mentioned about
gets
Mark
sound.
Ruffalo.
John, on the other hand, is using a Barbie microphone. What?
Barbie microphone? What is he talking
You don't
about?
like my microphone? I'm hurt now.
Oh, Carly. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
When Mark Ruffalo walks into that apartment,
Thanks,
they
Chris.
keep circling around him with the camera, and I was getting fucking annoyed. I
Yeah.
was like, "What is this? A Fast and the Furious movie? Like, stop! You just keep circling around him as he's walking in his apartment." And I was getting more annoyed, and also, the one thing I will say, the dialogue is very intentional in this movie.
Absolutely.
Very, very intentional.
Yes, and it's all functional on many levels, character levels,
Yes.
plot levels, and then deeper theme meaning levels. I think it
Talking about
works.
their family.
Can I mention the one big flaw for this movie? The one reason this movie doesn't get the number one spot for me time and again when I watch it, the final 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't get my head around how Jamie defeats Tom. And I'm sorry to spoil that for you folks that haven't seen it. And I'm not going to get too into the details. It just doesn't work for me. And the whole movie is built on the fact that this is cat and mouse thing. And I wanted Jamie to outsmart him somehow. I wanted Jamie to rise up. And it seems way too just dumb fucking luck for me. And that irks me. And I don't know if it irks anybody else, but it sticks in my craw big time. And it's what every time I watch the movie, I almost just want to stop at the end.
It's
just not watch it.
100%. I was watching it of
Oh man, comment of the night right
There it
there.
is. There it is.
here's what's funny is I was watching it late at night, and again my wife was watching it with me. She eventually was just like, I gotta go to bed. She missed the last 10 minutes of the movie. She's like, so how did it end? I'm like, how you saw it end.
You pick, right?
I was like, that's fine, because it does just feel like I gotta find a way to tie it up, because Jamie Foxx, I feel like, has never shot a gun in his entire life, and it was just like blind stinking luck.
Yeah.
And it's like, whatever. Let's see what
But
happens.
when he was Electro, when he became
I'm gonna
Electro,
put this
it
right
fixed the
here
gap in
just
his
for
teeth.
Chris. Now, the rest of the night, Chris.
I
This is what
think
you
he
get.
thought you were using your headphones as that little mic on
No,
there
I'm not.
He
too.
said it in the comment that he was talking about back to
Biggie Shack.
Yeah, Biggie,
Biggie
Shaq.
Shaq's
I know.
like-
It's funny.
like-
I think this was post Tom jumping on.
No,
the
it was
couch.
pre. I'm pretty
PJ.
sure it's pre.
No, I think it's post, because that the jumping on the couch was like late 90s, wasn't it?
That
I
was.
thought- I thought it was early
That was
aughts,
War of
but-
the Worlds.
It was post.
Oh.
This was pre.
That's right.
This was pre Tom jumping on the couch.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I
Anybody
remember
have
War of
last
the Worlds.
thoughts on the ending? Carlito, I'd love to hear your thoughts
So-
on how Jamie defeats Tom.
You know, to me, I
He went
guess.
back in
2005, so it wasn't very far after.
I
Tom
see
jumping
what
on
you
the
did
couch
there.
was 2005.
Oh, see, so it was this. This was
Right
pre.
there.
This
I
movie.
said it
was
was
pre.
Jamie
but it
jumping on
wasn't too
Tom's
far.
wife.
I thought he meant the couch was
No.
pre.
This was pre the couch,
Okay.
but it was only by
Gotcha.
a year.
Okay.
That's what I
According to my
thought.
quick
That's what I
Google
thought.
research.
Hey, get off of there.
All right.
Uh,
Carlito,
my thoughts.
Talk about the ending here.
So I never really thought about it that way, I guess.
Your suspension of disbelief just rode through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for me, everything changed when they had that conversation about billions of galaxies, millions of stars like ours in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just was like, blew my mind. And then so I kind of bought into the ending of, yeah, dumb luck. But looking at it with my critical hat on, I can see the critiques, and they are valid. I agree.
See, John, what you missed is you didn't see the director cut of Collateral, where Jamie Foxx is in the other train car shouting at Jamie Foxx through the wall. Kill him! He's gonna be coming through.
Him.
Shoot it, just like in Interstellar. It was the
He
same.
distracted
scene.
him by saying
Oh my
Martha,
God.
and then it was like he looked like, "Who's Martha?"
Why'd you say that name?
Dan, did you have any issues with the ending? Does it work for you? Because I have some people, like my brother loves this movie, and
It felt
totally
rushed.
works for him.
It did feel
that little
rushed.
bit. Okay.
A little bit, but like everything up to that, again, the best parts were them in the car.
Absolutely.
And then the weird fucking club where he's trying to kill the Russian, or
Oh
not
my
the Russian, the
gosh.
Japanese guy, where like
Oh,
Tom's
yeah.
just
The
killing
intensity of that
everybody.
club and the chaos of where people are, and yet somehow cinematography, you're able to tell exactly what's happening.
Not to
Yeah,
mention
Blade
the
Blood
Paul
Rave.
Oakenfold music playing in the background. But just saying,
It was the Blade Blood rave all over again.
it was
Way
cool.
better than the
But
Blood
that
Rave.
was,
Don't
I will
be-
say though, that was the start of where the ending worked a little bit better for me, because I had to start to suspend my belief in that
Mhm.
scene, because
Okay.
that scene was a little bit of just like, really?
Well, Tom just had to fight through a gauntlet of people, so he was
Tom Cruise
tired.
didn't get touched at all here? Like, come on. Like, really? Like that like I feel like you had to start to suspend your belief a little bit there. And so by the time we got to the train, it didn't, that I don't think hit as hard.
Huh. Interesting. All right.
I still
just
agree. I
was
still
tired.
was.
So we've got 3 movies left. I know that
Ooh.
technically he's got a 4th film that probably will drop in 2023. If anybody doesn't know, he did a film with Adam Driver that is a biopic of Ferrari, the gentleman behind the Ferrari manufacturing. And I know that they're having a ton of troubles with American distributions for that film, but it's likely to drop in 2023. But we're not going to count that, obviously, because none of us would have a shot to see it. We've got 3 movies left,
I've already
and
seen it.
arguably we're on the decline in quality of the era. And it is time for Miami Vice 2006.
Boy,
Let's get into Dan. How did you define Colin Farrell's look in this movie?
He had an aggressive mullet. He's doing this raspy,
I
like
love it.
Wolverine voice. Is like, I think we're gonna have to do a drug deal.
I love that the poster even intentionally cut the mullet out. They're like, no, let's just get his
Yes.
hairline. We don't need the edges.
We had to show way more long, awkward sex scenes than we ever need. Like the one in the car with Gong Li who was Mulan at one point. Fucking terrible. Like this is a movie that never needed to be made. It didn't need to exist. Like it was like they saw Bad
I'll tell you,
Boys.
this is what I paid my ticket to come to the show tonight for, was to hear Dan rant on Miami Vice.
No, like they saw Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2, where they're like, let's get the 2 most unfunny motherfuckers we can in one movie together and put them together. Like when Greg's like, well, I got to see Jamie Foxx's ass. That's a highlight, I guess. It's 2 fucking movies going on at the same time, and neither
So-
of them ever meet.
I mean,
So I just wanted on record that he hasn't seen Collateral or Last of the Mohicans, from what I recall, but he's seen Miami Vice. JP, what the heck?
I
Sorry,
mean-
had to pause for that moment. Station identification. I on the rewatch, I legitimately went into Miami Vice hoping that I would like it a lot more than the first time I saw it. I was
tries.
unable to finish this movie. I got about 2/3 of the way in, and I was like, I'm hating this. Why am I watching this? And I quit.
hated you for making me watch it.
I quit and I walked away. So this, spoiler alert, least favorite movie that I've watched from Michael Mann is this one. It's just bad.
spoiler alert, I didn't hate it as much as y'all did. Like, and I went in with low expectations so maybe that worked for me because John, you had already watched it. I think Dan, you had already watched it in the chat, and you both were talking to me, and I'm just like, all right, this isn't going to be good. And like, I remember texting you and they're like, when did you fall off? Because you said like a third of the way through. And I was like, I'm still in. I know when you fell off because it was as soon as the first act ended, and then Michael Mann decided he was going to try and have a romance relationship with Colin Farrell's character. And
so fucking horrible. They
like,
had the chemistry of two wet bags of dog shit.
If you take the first act and the third act of the movie and make it an episode of Miami Vice, y'all would dig it. And you cut out that second, because the action scenes at the beginning and the action scenes at the end, I think were great. The problem is they spent so much time in the world setting up that third act and the payoff wasn't strong enough because of you were spending so much time. If you cut that out and you went a different route, it would have been better.
Here's what I was taking away with the second night, and I don't know, Carlito, if you had a chance to watch this movie or if you've ever seen
I'm sure he loved it.
Just to be contrary. My biggest takeaway was that I consistently felt like Jamie Foxx was in a movie where he was taking this really seriously, and it was going to be his next big Bad Boys hit or whatever. And Colin Farrell was making a comedy version, like a sketch comedy version of Miami Vice, the show. I felt like they were legitimately making two different shows, and they could not find a commonality between them. And their chemistry as like people that actually liked each other, I felt like they were just not in the same movie together.
They were the Canadians from South Park. I'm not your buddy guy. I'm not your guy friend.
I felt like they honestly, even when they were in scenes together talking, they wouldn't even look at each other. It was just like, yeah, over there. You go. I'm not going to look. I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not going to look at you.
You're going to put us out there, Chief. I'm going to bang that Asian girl.
It did not take place in the 80s. No, it was supposed to take place in 2006, despite all the costuming and hair. But Carlito, did you watch it? Did you feel this?
So I watched the Cliff Notes version on YouTube right before our stream.
Wait, what? There's a Cliff Notes? Is this the opposite of watching the director's cut of Batman versus Superman?
It's the opposite, exactly. Yeah. No, I watched this Joe Blow movie reviews or whatever. I don't know. Anyway,
that's how you did it.
I will give you. If you never watched Joe Blow,
he actually
that is.
The 5 good ones they just rip every movie that they do. Trailers. It's pretty funny.
It's actually
the horror ones are good.
Pretty good contact. Check out that channel for sure. But the thing I guess I took away from a lot of the clips that I saw in like 10 minutes.
Starsky and Hutch. They did it. Ben Stiller did remake an 80s cop buddy show. He did Starsky and Hutch.
The one thing I took away from it that I learned was immediately after filming stopped, Colin Farrell entered rehab. So
thank God.
I wish he'd flipped that and done rehab first.
No, I think though it makes sense in the context of when the movie was on, because I was just doing research here. It was on the tail end of the movie right before that. He had done The New World, where it was that like John Smith, Pocahontas, which again, he was
Terrence Malick.
Colin Farrell, like 4 years before this, was on like The Recruit. It was supposed to be kind of like the new up and coming action. And then he literally did SWAT, which was a box office dud, Home at the End of the World, which crashed.
I will say I could rewatch SWAT and I will never rewatch Miami Vice.
Alexander was supposed to be his big, moment, Oscar moment, and that dud, The New World, and then this was it. So I feel like this was, thank goodness he had this, because immediately like a year or two following it, we got In Bruges, which is fantastic.
Amazing.
So basically he's Sam Worthington. We're like the film industry was like trying to shove him down our throat.
And they were trying to make him into this Oscar-winning talent. But until now, boom.
Perfect.
There it is. Here's the best part about this entire show. I think the only thing we've successfully done is convince Gore Vidal he needs to watch Miami Vice. I think he's legitimately waffling on his passing.
Gore, get a mullet, do some.
See, look! It didn't happen. The only thing we've done is convince JP to watch Collateral and Gore Vidal to watch.
It's on HBO Max if you have it.
It's
It
never
took me
left
4
my-
tries to
it-
get through it,
yeah.
but I got
And if he
through
didn't go to rehab because of this movie, we might not have ever gotten the Penguin, Carlito.
The
The what?
Lobster was good.
The Penguin.
Lobster was a good fucking
He's the
movie.
penguin in the Batman.
Penguin. And
In the
what?
Batman.
I don't know. Oh, the emo crime fighter guy. Gotcha.
So let's move on. We got 2 left that I know Carlito is dying to talk about. Johnny Depp as John Dillinger in Public Enemies. So I'm gonna give you the floor here, little Carlito, because I know you're a
Oh,
fan.
man, I
and
gotta go
connect
first.
to this film.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal stuff I connect with on it, but long story short, because I don't want to put Greg to sleep. I'm a huge history buff. So John Dillinger and the history of the FBI, and because long story short, I almost became an FBI agent. So anyway, we won't go down that road, but yeah,
Christopher Nolan's house every day. So what was Tenet about?
Hey,
Why are you
give it-
investigating?
give him a shot.
long story
Come on.
short, by the way, cheers, fellas. The music, Elliot Goldenthal nailed it on this, which he did on Heat too, which I forgot to bring up, by the way.
Yep.
But
And Moby also had
yeah, Moby
at the
too.
end,
That's
man.
one of Michael Mann's favorites to use in there. But for me, it was the Billie Holiday music, Otis Taylor, and kind of like the bluesy music or whatever. But so yeah, that and Johnny Depp, I think at first I wasn't so sure about his performance, but the older I get and the more I look back on it, he really kind of got into the character of John Dillinger and pretty much for the most part nailed him. I mean, obviously there's a lot of historical and creative liberties that they took to kind of mix the timeline around, but for the most part, the stuff that really matters.
Okay, I'm a little bothered that
on
JP has
accuracy.
seen like all of the crappy movies at the end of this guy's career, but none of the gold at the beginning.
All of the crappy movies. What are you talking about?
Like, come on, JP.
Are you surprised it's JP?
Questioning a lot of his life choices.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
good review, Carlito.
I question JP's. Yeah, I just question him generally, but yeah. So this one I had an emotional attachment to because I moved to Chicago like literally a week after they finished filming for this film. So I was kind of bummed about that, but yeah, I don't even know. It sucks because I'm not as eloquent as John or Bearded or Dan, but it's a very personal film for me for a lot of reasons, but also when I lived there, I think it was 2010 or 11, so it would have been almost 80 years, I think 78 years or something since his death. I went to the bar across the street in Lincoln Park from where he was shot outside that theater, and it was kind of like a little Dillinger Days type deal or whatever. But anyway, I met a couple females. It was a good night. But had a good time.
Did you just yada 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 this?
Yada yada.
This is our John Dillinger with the lady.
Yikes. Bearded. Sorry, Carlito just took this in a different direction here.
I almost brought some photos, but I was like, I better not get into that.
I want to raise a cinematography question for Dan because he's mentioned some of the cinematography. And for those that don't know, one of the big things Michael Mann is a proponent of is digital filmmaking. And he's one of the first big name filmmakers to transition from 35 millimeter filmmaking to digital cameras and digital filmmaking. And there are definitely films of his where you can tell exactly when this change takes place. And a movie like Collateral, it works perfectly. I think as a digital film, I think there's something about the proximity and the closeness. The main reason I don't like Public Enemies is I don't think it works as a digital film. And there are times when I feel like I'm watching a home movie, a cheap, crappy home movie. And this movie shot on 35 millimeter film would have been, in my opinion, a supremely better film.
100% agree.
That is the biggest problem I had with it. Did you notice any of that, Dan?
So I'm going to be real honest. I didn't fucking watch this movie because I hate Johnny Depp. So I skipped it.
Okay.
But having said you talking about the digital photography and stuff, 28 days later, shot on Sony Handycams. And pretty decent looking movie. So like there is a way to do it, but I guess because of the guerrilla way it was filmed, it doesn't stand out that much, except there's never going to be a 4K version of it.
What about you, Greg? Did you
probably
notice
gotta
any of
add.
that cinematography wise? Did it? And because for me, like when I think of like amazing 20s and 30s era captured on film, I'm thinking Untouchables. I'm thinking those Humphrey Bogart films, and this movie just felt like bad home video sometimes.
Gatsby looked good though.
I mean, the actors were good, the sets were good, the costumes were good, the stunts in the fight, but like the visuals felt flat.
Yeah, it felt like of any of his movies that he could have done his style that he typically did, this would have been perfect for it. Being the old timey, gangster, like we're like, I like Collateral, but like probably would have gotten more love from people that aren't cinephiles. Like if it was not as like grungy of the videoing. And so I wonder if like, it's like he went more that route where it looked a lot cleaner of a movie where I'm like, man, this is where you want it to be more film style than digital. Like
if this had the look of like The Untouchables, which is
like,
a movie I kept comparing it to in my mind, where everything had this amazing look, the suits are all, the clothes and the sets and the look. This movie felt like it needed a cinema scope, and it didn't have it.
I mean, even Dick Tracy popped more, maybe because of the colors.
Okay.
No, like honestly, when you watch Dick Tracy, though, like
he's happy
popped.
with that sentence, but he just wants you to take the word "even" out, and then I think it would be a better excise that little.
Yeah, just excise.
I'm a huge Johnny Dangerously fan.
So I'm not trying to like.
Dick Tracy doesn't need a qualifier. Okay, Dick Tracy is a cinematic genius, so just stop right there.
What Carlito's
That's
point,
why we're gonna watch Warren Beatty movies.
Like story wise, acting wise, I think this movie is really solid, and it does continue Michael Mann's desire to have like split characters. You've got this John Dillinger who's like a social, he's going out, he's partying, he's like popular, everybody loves him, but he's also like
dark side,
incredibly dangerous, incredibly violent, incredibly unstable, and the split, division inside of the character is fascinating and very interesting. And I think the movie is discussing like a lot of things about like, the media perception of somebody versus the reality of who they are, which I think is very interesting. I just think the filmmaking and the cinematography for me just kept pulling me out every time. And I struggled with it.
I can agree. I will say a couple things real quick if I can.
Yeah,
go for it.
Gorgeous.
The acting by Christian Bale as Melvin Purvis. Holy dear God, he just encapsulated that character, and even the family said that he sounded like a lot of recordings they had of him still. So
Christian Bale, just for those that don't know, he's the gentleman who was tasked by the FBI with trying to catch Dillinger. So he's the other half to the cop criminal dynamic here,
and kind of a tragic figure because J. Edgar Hoover railroaded him. But anyway, we won't get into
which for me, like the end of the movie mentions the fact that this guy commits suicide later in life, and for me, I felt like, how is that not part of this story? Like his deterioration, like I wanted that in there. Like, don't throw me that as a freaking footnote. That's a part of the story.
That's been a whole another 2.5 hours, though, John. Jesus.
I think you could have easily found a way to include
and that's not right up Michael Mann's alley. Like,
well, it's a separate movie, not 5 hours.
But, so for me, there was just some things missing that kept this. It was a solid movie.
I can see that, objectively speaking, from like if you don't have an emotional or historical attachment, for sure. So that's why I didn't give anybody crap if they weren't fans of it. So, well, the other thing I was going to mention, I will give Michael Mann credit though. He does make gunfights and the sound of guns amazing, even if you can't understand his dialogue, and the rest of it sounds like crap. The gunfights.
I think that's a great point, and I think we've talked a little bit about themes of his movies, visuals for his movies, casting things for his movies, cinematography for his movies. But yeah, sound design and gunfights, the way he uses that. I mean, that sequence, you talk about heat. and that gunfight in the streets there.
Let's talk about Little Bohemian, Public Enemies. Good Lord.
I think
that was
there are
extensive.
so many sequences, even the breakout of the prison, right at the beginning of Public Enemies, where there's the guards in the gun tower and they're mowing it. I mean, that was like the sound design, the film, the squibs and the explosions, the special effects. I don't want to call it special effects, more like stunts.
Right.
Really, really great.
Historically inaccurate, but yes.
I mean,
the way that
y'all hyping on the gunfights. This was, I almost couldn't finish watching this movie because I'm just like, I got so tired changing the volume control up on this. And
So
I will say the most, like, I don't know, where it's weird that I got hung up on this scene. You talk about an unbelievable scene where you're like, really? Johnny Depp's gonna walk into a police station and walk around the room where
Look at the board,
looking at all the board, and nobody's when he even then like just like, oh, what's the score of the game? Like, no, like this. I don't. Again, for the movie, maybe they couldn't change his appearance as well as they did in real life. I don't know this from a historical standpoint, but like, it still was clearly Johnny Depp when he just has a mustache now. Like, it's Johnny Depp. Like,
he's not doing anything
for
to
as long as
deceive
you've been
them.
hunting down.
So, speaking of history, I was just like, this is just too on the nose, and it really soured me on it. Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'll have you know, Greg, that sometimes life is stranger than fiction.
Go for it. I'd love to hear it.
Because the skinny on this story is supposedly, according to the waitress that he took down to get her waitressing license, that actually happened. And the day that you're talking of with that Cubs game, I think it was, I think it was still, well, it would have been July, August, so not quite playoff season time, but it was a big game with the Cubs, and all the cops were paying attention to the radio on the Cubs game.
That's funny.
So they weren't looking at him. Supposedly, that's the scuttlebutt on that. That's her statement. I mean, the FBI and all the media will tell you never happened, not true, blah blah blah. But also, he did have plastic surgery supposedly, and his appearance was
now that
super altered. So
if that's the case, fine. I believe that a little bit more, and I get it. If they can't do it for the
Depp.
movie.
That guy's smoking hot.
But yeah, you can't do that, Johnny. And then the other thing is debatable again. The guy that they actually killed wasn't even John Dillinger. It was a guy named Jimmy Lawrence, which actually existed. So but we won't get into that.
Theory that we don't need to. I wanted to mention this question because I do believe, I mean, if we're all willing to say Collateral is one of his best movies, then clearly not in decline. That was one of his last 4 movies. But I will say the last 3, and let's get into his final one. I don't know if anybody saw it.
I did.
His most recent film is called Blackhat. With our boy Thor from the Avengers films. We got Hemsworth there as a criminal, believe it or not, really muscular, great looking computer hacker who knows how to shoot guns and fight.
Didn't Wolverine do this back in 1999?
Swordfish.
Yeah,
boom. But they had Halle Berry topless.
Callback.
This movie does not have Halle Berry topless.
No, it does not.
And it doesn't have crazy John Travolta either.
This comes in second on my least favorite Michael Mann movies. How many people saw this one?
I saw half of it. I was watching it yesterday morning. At work, I had to go do work because that's stupid. But and then I decided rather than finishing it, I watched Last of the Mohicans, and I feel like it was a wise choice.
Wise choice.
Yes, his last film was 8 years ago, although he's been working on this movie, this biopic of Ferrari for quite a while.
Which also didn't Christian Bale already do that?
Yeah, the
Ford
versus
versus
Ferrari.
yeah, but that Ferrari's not in it because it's about Ford. Ferrari is like
I didn't
the
watch
enemy.
that, so I don't know.
Okay.
So.
No, Ford versus
It's decent.
Ferrari is actually very
It's good.
interesting and really good. But it's
Coach
about
Vic,
the
I will
Ford
have
Motor
you.
Company and about the guy who was helping design, engineer, and race those cars. And their enemy, their opponent, was Ferrari.
Can you highlight Coach Vic's comment?
I mean, come on.
This one.
It's not really the Cubs playing pretty big.
It's up until the 50s and 60s, the Cubs were one of the
shocking
best
twist
teams in the country. So you just quiet down.
I mean,
over
all
there,
I
Coach
want to
Vic.
say about this movie is it is flat, it's boring, it's bland, it is useless. And I think it's clearly an example of him being handed a script that he didn't write. He wasn't directly involved
and knows
with,
nothing about.
and just tried to make it.
What about the
And
cinematography, John? Give it a shot.
Woefully miscast Chris Hemsworth because
Charismatic actor giving
I
nothing
firstly the fact
act
that they
on.
try to convince me that Chris Hemsworth is a genius computer nerd.
But in
Epic fail.
Ghostbusters, he was the
Second,
secretary.
At one point in the movie, the guy busts out a gun and starts like shooting like incredibly accurately, like he just has lived his life around fighting and shooting guns. And I'm like, you can't have it both ways, people. Come
Did
on,
you know
can't.
that Jason Statham was a marine biologist?
I almost wanted somebody to click in that meme where all of a sudden Strathairn jumps in and says, "Oh, that's Jason Bourne." Like it just doesn't fit. It doesn't work. And this movie just is ridiculous.
Who did Ford versus Ferrari?
Anybody like this movie?
No, it was flat.
Never saw it.
I ended up turning it off, and then started appreciating the Inside Man. And then I went back and watched Children of Men with Clive Owen. I went on a Clive Owen kick for a while.
You just decided I'm going to derail and watch Clive.
Kill
Owen
them all.
movies.
Oh no, shoot them up. Shoot them up.
Shoot 'em up is awesome. I
Shoot 'em
don't
up is-
put
That
some
is
respect on that
guilty
name.
pleasures for
This
sure.
is what I love about Dave.
I love it.
Absolutely, man.
But,
Guilty pleasures.
I started imagining this movie with Jason Statham
Oh my god.
because how unfunny he is. Yeah, I'm a hacker. Blackhat's what I do.
I think to Greg's point, what makes Swordfish work is they know that it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're just willing
And Halle
to
Berry's
be
topless.
over the top, Simon Windsor, ridiculous, stupid, versus this movie taking itself seriously. And you're like, you don't get to cast Chris Hemsworth in this part and then pretend to take yourself seriously.
I did
Wow,
enjoy
that was
that,
like-
Donnie. That
So,
was pretty
Chris
good.
Carlito,
Hemsworth, like
you
Michael
asked-
Mann's doing this.
Carlito, you asked, and I want to answer to this. You asked who did Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
James Mangold, who also did Logan,
Weird.
Wolverine, Night and Day, 310 to Yuma,
Walk the
Walk
line.
the Line, Identity, Peyton Leopold, John's favorite, one of John's
Yeah.
favorites.
Really great movie
Thing.
about
Girl
incest.
Interrupted,
If
Copland.
you haven't seen Kate and Leopold, great movie about incest.
I think I'll pass.
Which
on
is
that one.
scary because that's one of my wife's favorite romantic
Possibly
comedies.
so.
So.
If you
Things
watch the movie and realize like how this genetically works, she's sleeping with Lib Schreiber in the present, but then goes back in time and becomes his ancestor.
Okay, I don't.
Cotton Weary.
I would rather watch About
Like,
Time
point
100
that
more
little
times
fact
than
out to
watch
somebody, and
Kate
that
Leopold.
whole movie just completely House of Cards falls apart.
You mentioned About Time, and John didn't hear you, so I just want to bring
It's
that
okay.
up again.
It's a great movie.
He heard me. He just doesn't want to get
I don't
derailed.
feel the need to talk about Blackhat anymore. I kind of
No,
want to take
no.
the name off the
Oh,
screen.
we were
No.
still talking about it. I forgot.
No,
I don't know.
we started
Let's
we started going to rom coms, and we went to time travel, which means now John's going to bring up his favorite time travel movie.
Let's do the randomizer.
Back to the Future.
No,
The ra-
what's
do the
the weird
randomizer.
one you made me watch? With
Was it
Sean
Somewhere in
Connery,
Time.
Sorry, Time Bandits.
Time Bandits. Yeah, that one.
I don't think I've
Somewhere
seen
in
that
Time
one.
with Superman in it. was
Dude, I love
awesome.
Somewhere in Time.
Oh, Somewhere in Time. Yeah, great movie.
Awesome.
So okay,
My
so
mom
this was our-
made me watch that movie.
This was our quick 2-hour breakdown
quick,
of Michael
very
Mann's
quick.
only 11 movies. We're about to spin the wheel here and figure out which one of these jamokes is going to give us our pick for February. The rules of this and how it works is simple. There are 5 of us, even though Fire Guy Ryan isn't here. He is the 5th member of the crew.
He's never going to be here.
He's never
gonna
gonna
be here.
even
But
though he's
we
on the
need a
wheel. He's never gonna be
tiebreaker.
here.
We need a tiebreaker, and that's what he's here for. So we'll spin the wheel that I've got right here with all of their names on it. All 3 guys.
Okay, he's
when
not on there.
Whoever the name lands on, they will tell us who they pick. They need to get 3 out of the 5 of us to agree, which means themselves.
And if
Does that
we
mean
don't
we have
get it,
to-
we just pick another one, right?
Do we have to wait on Ryan to respond
Yeah,
and
no,
stuff then?
The person doesn't get eliminated, only the director they picked.
Okay.
So, if we can't get 3 people to agree, for example, if Greg says, I want to do Steven Spielberg, and he's the only one that picks it, if me and Dan and Carlito both, all 3 say,
Long
no, thank
fucking
you, then
show.
he loses. He's already out. He's got to pick somebody else. If we get a split decision, I will text Fire Guy Ryan right now and make
He
him
won't answer. He's
Not gonna. He's too busy. Today's his
already got it
busy
ready.
day.
I hope the wheel falls on me because I'm ready.
I like
I, th-
that.
I think I'm
like
ready.
that.
Ready too.
Of course you're
Okay.
ready, Coder. We know what you're doing.
You
All
got
right.
no.
We
I'm
know.
gonna
You
shuffle
we
the
said you're
names.
not going to do.
Might
no one
surprise
for the
ya.
first time.
All right,
Might
so
surprise
Dan is
ya.
in blue, Greg is in red, Carlito is mellow yellow, and I'm
Mellow
going to spin
yellow.
and let's see what we got.
What is this garbage?
Come on. Dang it.
Oh
Dang it.
God!
Oh,
Boo.
Dan, the man hath won again. Dan, how you feeling, buddy?
I feel like that was pre-recorded. I want to see a live version of that.
Oh my God.
I'd rather have the chat vote because this is boo.
Boo! Oh, Greg,
Who
you're
are
such
you
a good
picking,
sport.
Dan?
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh lordy!
Okay, so let's talk a little bit before we roll into this. Paul Thomas Anderson, director of Boogie Nights,
Magnolia.
Hard 8, Magnolia.
Ooh, Magnolia, I like that
There
one.
will be blood. The Master. And what was the one that he did with Joaquin Phoenix not too long ago?
I thought that was The Master. And then Licorice, whatever.
Oh, are you talking?
When he was a cop or something, or private detective?
Licorice Pizza.
Like,
Yeah, Licorice
You were
Pizza.
never here. Is that his?
no, the one where he's
No.
the private investigator in like
Phantom
LA in the
Thread.
70s.
Oh, yeah.
Inherent
Which-
Vice.
That was it.
Inherent Vice.
I 100% knew this was going to get voted down, though.
Yeah, JP is gonna skip that show. I guess we don't really care. We don't really care, JP. You
So
probably
Now
haven't seen
that
any
will
of them
work.
anyway.
The man who made the only Adam Sandler film that I like. I love it.
Wow.
So this is what I love about the show. You got Gore saying, "Now you got a good pick," and JP saying, "Peace, I'm out of here."
Freaking
Yes,
JP.
those are movies. Those are.
I had
films.
another one that's sitting in my backup that it could be also very debatable.
Dan, so here's what I'm gonna say before we get. It's not a bad choice. Here's
Got long movies.
Here's my issue is I don't know if I'm stoked about it coming off of Michael Mann into Paul. Like if I had a break, I might be more excited about it.
Okay, so I have two backups that are totally different.
Well, I mean, we can vote. We can still vote for your first one.
Yeah, you just got to get.
You got to
at
get
least
two
of
other
us.
people. I'm out. I'm
but
out.
I was
I'm
kind
out
of
for now.
I was in the
now.
weird place of it might be too serious.
I'm out for now. Like because I also spoiler alert for that show. I hate There Will Be Blood, but I love Daniel Day-Lewis in that role. He does great, but the movie I thought sucked. But maybe I'll be changed when we watch.
You know what? I'm gonna swap out for a different director.
Oh,
That's
he's
gonna be
he's
fun.
calling an
Ooh,
audible
pulling
based
the
on
swap.
Bearded alone without hearing from Carlito.
Wow.
Without
Without
No,
hearing
I-
from me.
So I think this is a more fun
Without hearing
director
from me.
who's all over the place. Robert Rodriguez.
Oh hell yeah, I'm in for that.
Wow.
El
Robert
Mariachi
Rodriguez,
Desperado.
El Mariachi Desperado.
Alita Battle Angel.
Alita Battle Angel.
Alita Battle Angel. I
think I
that's
just
the
made
one with
Greg
George
tap out
What's the
again.
George Clooney one?
From Dusk Till Dawn.
Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah. And
Oh
of
wait,
all the Spy Kids- all the
highlight
Spy
JP's
Kids
comment.
movies. There's a
Highlight
ton of
JP's
Spy
comment,
Kids
will you?
movies he directed.
Yeah,
Not a Texan. my attorneys are
Not a
suing
Texan.
Greg.
Wow.
I'm out. Gore's out. Well, you can watch Miami Vice while we do that stream, Gore.
This is so
Gore,
good.
Gore.
We
Listen,
just flipped. We just flipped. The
Gore,
script
your
on
attorneys
audio.
are already on retainer for me with all my shorts I make with my wife about the
Oh my god.
trouble I'm going to get in, so they can't sue me because I have them on retainer. Gore,
Yeah, he
I'm
did
not
do Shark
against.
Boy and Lava Girl.
Listen, I like Dan's pick. I like Dan's pick a lot, but
Which one?
The first one you did.
I like them both. I think they're
I
both
like it a
good
lot,
picks.
but the problem is when I commit to these shows, I really do try to watch these movies. And like Michael Mann has consumed my life for 3 weeks, and like I haven't been watching other stuff. I've been trying to read other comics for interviews and
That was a
things. Like,
shot at me. Oh, by the way, that was a shot. At me.
that's a shot at John. So I feel like I just need like a breather for like a month before I get into
I'm
like.
wearing the mint chocolate chip bearded shirt. Hey, come on.
So
Well, we'll have to talk about it in our private chat anyway.
No.
so, like-
We're
No,
gonna
no,
try
we
to
can-
see if we can get.
No, we
3
gotta
votes
hash this
now.
out here. Come on.
If we can't, we'll go offline and I'll text the fire guy here and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, he'll respond
well,
in like a
Carlito
week.
already
So,
said yes.
Carlito
So,
said
John,
yes to both.
So
Yeah,
John,
I'm down for either. That's
So John, I'll
Greg
let you-
said no to Thomas Anderson. What did he say to Robert?
I haven't
Rodriguez?
said it yet. I'm letting you
Oh,
speak
okay.
now, John.
about the both of them.
You can
Greg
speak
will be the
to both of them.
tiebreaker.
Let's see. I've seen pretty much all of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies. I
I'm only looking forward to rewatching about half of them. I will say, like, they're long, they're heavy, and they're hard. That sounded wrong.
Listen, Mastodon, before John says anything, I can commit to a show, and that's why I do it. And that's why it drove me insane that I was committing. I commit, son. I commit to these shows.
And nobody's committed to have to do it except for the person who picks the movie.
No, yeah, exactly. The idea of this program is there's 5 of us, and whoever can make the screening that month and can show up will be the one. I will say I'm down for either one, I think.
I feel like Robert Rodriguez is more fun.
I think I've seen enough. My curiosity is I've not seen any but the first Spy Kids movie. And now I'm like, am I buckled in for Lava Girl and Shark Boy? Like, how far am I going down this Robert Rodriguez dark hole? You know?
Dark hole. Greg
So,
looks like he's
Dan,
just
are
totally
you settling
out.
on Rodriguez?
I think so, because it's fun and like they're fast moving movies too, which is also hugely important. I've never watched the kids' movies, to be honest.
Oh, I'm probably not gonna watch any kids movies. We'll see.
All right, I'm texting Fire Guy Ryan. We'll get a response. Gore says I'm not keen on Rodriguez.
Isn't that make it? That's 3.
Right.
I think that kind of puts it in as a lot.
No, you don't have to. Ryan doesn't have to vote. Dan, John, and Carlito all said 3. You guys are in. It's Rodriguez.
I just wanted to text Ryan
okay
to make sure that he felt like a part of this.
He doesn't watch.
I mean, Carla Gugino, I think, is a great point there. Great point. I recently watched Battle Angel with my daughters, and they loved it. By the way, what's up, Kevin from Entropy and Comics?
Hey, Kevin.
Greg's just like, I'm done. I'm ready to go to bed.
He's like, I don't like either of these choices, but hey, the good news, Greg, is nobody's obligated to be here every month. If you want to take the month off,
that's true, Craig.
You can relax, you can chill.
I mean, I would be heartbroken.
Here's my dilemma, and because I actually I feel like I could pull off watching Robert Rodriguez's movies and things like that. It'll be a game time decision because I'm going to be in the midst of, I'm going to be going hard in February on the Oscar movie watching because that's a big thing for me of trying to watch all the Oscar movies that come out. And
I respect your game on that.
That's probably going to take precedent. But I won't have to rewatch. He did Machete, right?
He did do Machete.
I'm not going to have to rewatch Machete. I'm not going to have to rewatch
one of the 4 rooms.
I can talk about Spy Kids.
One part of 4 rooms.
I can talk about all 3 Spy Kids.
One of the better parts of 4 rooms.
So I'll probably be in, but I just won't probably commit to as much of the movies as I did for Michael Mann because I'm going to be deep into watching Oscar movies.
I'm looking forward to rewatching Desperado and El Mariachi. Those are 2 of the ones, and From Dusk Till Dawn, I don't need an excuse to watch that again. And Alita Battle Angel is probably one of my favorite movies of the last 6 years.
Yeah, I'm with Coach Vic on this one. I'm not going to even get started on the Oscars. So I'm kind of over it. I used to do that every year too, but I'm
not, man. I love it. I'm into it.
That's great, man. I'm happy
From
for
Dusk
you.
Till Dawn, JP. She's pretty great in From Dusk Till Dawn too.
She's groovy, to quote Bruce Campbell. So yeah, boy, we're way over 2 hours, and I was like, "Oh, Michael Mann."
Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up right here. You can
time out real quick. I just want to address because Carlito said it. I've seen some stuff in the chat about the Oscars are a joke. What I love about doing the Oscar watch, what I will say for me is, it forces me to watch movies that I would never watch, and it makes me a wider culture viewer of that. There are movies I watch and that are Oscar movies, and I go, how the heck is this not there? Whatever that stupid one was that was like a kind of the Western last year, was a Netflix one that was like the talk of the town. It wasn't a Western, but it was set in, it was a dud. The Way of the Dog. It was trash in my opinion as a movie. I'm like, how is this nominated?
I don't know how.
I didn't even see
it. What it got.
And so but what I appreciate is it makes me watch movies I would never watch. And so I'm in for it.
I would not have seen One Night in Miami were it not for you and I watching all that stuff. And it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I half agree with that sentiment.
And so
I mean-
that's the reason I do it, because I enjoy. It's kind of like getting to watch the awards. My wife and I are like, oh, who's in this, and
Yeah.
I just don't get
I
into
wanna
the
I
picks
wanna
anymore,
raise-
and I don't watch the actual show.
This
That's
is a
where I was
great
going with
point
but-
that I think Greg and I know Fire Guy Ryan both brought up when we were talking about this show and doing a monthly look at filmmakers wanting to avoid
yep,
these names, like these
Mhm.
kinds of people. Everybody does Tarantino, everybody does Spielberg. Who else? Which is why I picked somebody like Michael Mann or Frank Oz was next on my list. Like people that are like, oh wow, they did that. They did all these movies, good or bad. I think you get a great discussion out of it, which is the same with people like Rodriguez or Paul Thomas Anderson. I think you have a spectrum. How many people are talking about Hard Eight? You know, like how many people are having that discussion? You know, it's interesting. Hey, we got porn in the chat.
Yeah, I just
Finally.
noticed that.
I
was like,
I delete it, but I don't have that ability.
when we make it big, that's when you know you make it big is when you get porn in the chat. So
I don't have that.
I'm finally there. I've arrived.
Here, here's a little, because I like to spoil, give you guys a little teasers. I did it in the chat last time. One of my directors that is on the list, y'all mentioned a movie to recommend. You recommended a movie of one of my directors in this chat tonight.
Somebody in the chat did it.
No, y'all did.
We did.
Yep.
All right.
Interesting.
Will you tell us which panel did it? Which person?
No, because that'll give it right.
We'll save it for another time. But it sounds like, Dan, have we confirmed Robert Rodriguez?
We've confirmed it.
Robert Rodriguez?
Yeah, that sounds good. Like I think that's a fun one.
If you want to join in the discussion, if you want to be ready for it, firstly, down below, click on the link for Comic Chop News. It's right down below. We will be there somewhere at the start of March. We will get together. We'll sit down on a Friday, Saturday night, somewhere in that range, and do it up, chop up all these films. If you haven't seen very many of this filmmaker's movies, this is the month. Go to your library, grab those discs. Go online, see what you can rent, see what's streaming. I will be posting when usually I make a list, what's on Netflix, what's on Hulu, what's where, so that you can then follow along if you want to try and join us with some of these rewatches. If you have people you want us to watch and want us to discuss, definitely hit up any one of us. Obviously, Greg and Carlito are going to be the next 2 months.
I'm not going to listen to your suggestions because I already got my list. So hit
definitely
up.
You can hit those guys up and see if you can.
I'm just letting you know.
You guys know the same thing for me too.
Also, I love
you guys would get the director I would pick. By the way,
Tyler, this is the first episode we've ever done. So no, we haven't done.
We've just done one person, and it's Michael Mann. That's it. That's
Gore.
it.
Thank you for joining us. Everybody.
Mel Brooks is a lot of fun. I like Mel Brooks. Yeah, huge thank you to everybody who made the time. I know I emailed Gore just to say, hey, we're gonna be back talking movies. It's been so long, but I wanted him to know because honestly, Greg and I, when we started doing drinks and movies, it was to talk to Gore, to have a conversation.
And now now it's come full circle because now I do a show with Gore and it brings me great delight.
I still
wait. You do a show with Gore?
Yeah, we
Deadly Class.
Deadly Class.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a movie.
No, trying to get him on a
Deadly Class.
Bullets
if you don't watch, this is a promo because we're doing it in 2 weeks. I think February 15th
on this
guy's channel. You don't watch Deadly Class on JP's budget collecting channel, gang. JP, me, Haley from Shy Comic Girl, and Gore. It's great.
Which I'm offended I didn't get asked to do because I'm like one of the biggest Deadly Class fans. Not that I would have been able to make it on a weekday.
Bye, Tyler.
Tyler's like, you haven't done Fincher on your first episode? I'm unsubbing.
Hashtag Tyler sucks.
That's why it's on John's channel. It's unsub John, not me.
Yeah, obviously I'm the problem here. We're gonna do Stray Bullets at some point. You, me, and Jamie. We're gonna get Jay Hood on here to talk about that for sure. So huge thanks to everybody. If you want to comment on the video after it's posted and tell us filmmakers you think would be a great picks, we're trying to dodge those Tarantinos, those Scorseses that are always talked about, and instead get into some filmmakers that maybe people don't connect the dots to as much.
Have you guys heard of
makes it kind of fun?
Have you guys heard of a young filmmaker? James Cameron. I think that was
up and comer, right?
Yeah, like I mean,
I think
he's gonna make some money at some point.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Wait, time out. Put that back up, Carlito.
Oh, yikes.
He just needs to trim the sides a little bit. He has the same haircut as Dan.
Oh man.
We're on Dance Channel at the beginning of March to talk Robert Rodriguez movies, to get into some El Mariachi goodness. So I hope to see you guys all there. Thanks, everybody, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye. Fuck you, Greg.
Oh my God, I'm still waiting for the button to click. Still waiting.
Yeah.
Still waiting.